Chapter 794. The ground was very cold. Even though she was wearing wool socks, the bone-chilling coldness still spread from the soles of her feet to the rest of her body. She didn't care at all. Her eyes were firmly fixed in the direction of the car as she walked forward steadily with heavy steps. In the old district of the northern part of the city, there were many courtyards left behind. It was said that the people who used to live here were all people of high status. Jianghu carried xianxia on her back and stepped into a courtyard. This was the old house left behind by her grandfather. She would stay here for a few days every year. Someone would clean it every half a month so the room was clean and tidy, and there were all kinds of daily necessities. She put xianxia on the bed. She was so tired that she was sweating and her feet were almost frozen. She didn't have time to rest and ran to the kitchen to boil water. Lashchi, lashchi. An old but vigorous voice rang out. Jianghu hurriedly went out to greet him, only to see a white-haired old man carrying a large medical kit, running towards her as if he was flying. "Oh little Chi, pity these old bones of mine being called over by you in the middle of the night? Grandpa Tang, your medical skills are so good. Otherwise, I wouldn't have troubled you." Jianghu smiled and took the medicine box. She led him to the bedroom. "Grandpa Tang, my friend is seriously injured. Please take a look at him." Tang Hejia panted and stroked his beard. Okay, don't worry. Let me catch my breath." He looked down and suddenly saw that she was only wearing socks. He immediately blew his beard and stared at her. "You little girl, why didn't you wear shoes? What if you freeze?" Tang Hejia and Jianghu's grandfather, Su Zhenghang, were close friends. The Tang and Su families were old friends. Tang Hejia loved Jianghu very much. "Grandpa Tang, I'm fine. Please take a look at my friend. He's bleeding a lot." Jianghu was so anxious that she directly pushed him to the bed. "You won't die with me here. Chi girl, put on your shoes and come over to help me." Before Tang Hejia retired, he was a famous surgeon in the army. He could make a judgment just by looking at the position of xianxia's injury. "All right." Jianghu methodically took out the scalpels and other items from the medical kit. Although she had never studied medicine, under the influence of Tang Hejia, she still had a good understanding of these surgical instruments. Tang Hejia put on his mask and cut open xianxia's shirt with a pair of scissors. Suddenly, a muscular chest was exposed, followed by an abdomen with a six-pack. Although it was stained with blood, it didn't affect his charm at all. Jianghu blushed, but then she felt ashamed. She was also a nurse now, so how could she have so many scruples? Pursing her lips, she picked up a hot towel and carefully cleaned up the blood stains. Anesthetic. Tang Hejia stretched out his right hand. Jianghu hurriedly placed the anesthetic needle in his hand. Scalpel. Surgical forceps. Hemostatic forceps. In the brightly lit room, a bullet removal operation was being carried out nervously. 2 hours later, Tang Hejia completed the last step and was drenched in sweat. He took off his mask and slowly breathed a sigh of relief. "Okay girl, pay attention to his temperature tonight. If his fever is too high, give him the antipyretic medicine and use physical cooling methods." "Okay, I got it. Grandpa Tang, you must be tired. I'll take you to the guest room to rest." Jianghu looked at his tired face and her heart was full of gratitude. "No need, I'll go by myself. I'm familiar with this place as if it's my own home. You must be tired too. Rest for a while." Tang Hejia said a few more words to her before leaving. Jianghu took out a clean nightgown and toiletries from the wardrobe and sent to Tang Hejia's room. Then she went to the bathroom to take a shower. When she took off her socks, she found that the blisters on the soles of her feet were broken and the socks were stuck to the soles of her feet. When she took them off, she hissed in pain. After her shower, she changed into a set of home clothes and used alcohol to disinfect the soles of her feet. Then she covered herself with a blanket and stayed by xianxia's bedside. She leaned against the back of the chair and carefully looked at xianxia. In her previous life, she had focused all her attention on jianghu and had never seen the good in xianxia. For the first time, she realized that xianxia was even more beautiful than a woman. His tall nose was as exquisite as a sculpture, his thin lips were perfect to the extreme, and his pale face did not affect his innate nobility and arrogance. She still remembered how magnificent his eyes were when he opened them. She still remembered that he gave up his eyes and gave up his light for her. Her heart ached. She reached out and covered his eyes with her hands and murmured, "Xianxia, it's not too late. Xianxia, in this life, I don't want you to sacrifice anything for me. Xianxia, in this life, it's my turn to protect you." Jianghu adjusted the clock and woke up every half an hour. She touched xianxia's forehead to see if he had a fever. It was past 5 in the morning. He indeed had a fever. His beautiful face was flushed. Jiuqi checked his temperature with a thermometer and found that his temperature had reached 38 degrees Celsius. Her heart tightened and she quickly poured a glass of warm water and took out some fever medicine. Xianxia, Jiuqi wanted to wake him up to take the medicine but suddenly remembered that he was still a stranger to her. She could only gently pat his cheek. Hey, wake up, wake up, ah, thump. Jiuqi was sprawled on the floor, grimacing in pain. She looked at the culprit. She didn't know when Xianxia had already sat up straight. His long and narrow eyes glowed with a cold light. His thin lips were tightly pursed, and his entire body was releasing a violent aura. He was like a ferocious leopard, staring at her warily. But if she took a closer look, she would find that his gaze was a little unfocused. It seemed that he was not really awake. Damn it, she actually forgot about Xianxia's weird habit. That guy would never allow anyone to touch him when he was unconscious. She didn't understand why before, but after her rebirth, she could understand. His habit of being vigilant and on guard was obviously due to living in a dangerous environment for a long time. It was slowly cultivated. Thinking of this, her heart ached and she pitied him. Jiuqi rubbed her aching chest and stood up. She took a small step forward under a certain someone's dangerous gaze and said gently, "Don't be afraid, I'm Jiuqi. Do you still remember that I was the one who saved you from the forest today?" Xianxia's deep eyes moved slightly and his brows furrowed. He seemed to be thinking hard but also seemed to be trying hard to stay awake. Jiuqi did not rush him and stood quietly in front of the bed. His gaze gradually focused and became deep. After a long while, he moved his thin lips and said in a cold and indifferent voice, "What are you trying to do?" Jiuqi knew that he was completely awake. She heaved a sigh of relief and pointed to the cup of water and pills at the head of the bed. "You're running a high fever. I want to wake you up to take some fever medicine." Xianxia glanced at the medicine and then at the white bandage wrapped around his chest. He said indifferently, "I'm not taking it, it's too bitter. Give me an ice pack." After saying this, he lay back on the bed and did not even look at Jiuqi. His awkward look was like a child who was throwing a tantrum. Jiuqi sighed. This person was still like a child, afraid of taking medicine. She took the ice pack and placed it on his head. Her fingers accidentally touched his forehead and she could not help but frown. "Your fever is very serious. I'll get some alcohol." Jiuqi soaked the gauze in the alcohol and twisted it. She wanted to help him wipe his neck and chest, but his cold eyes were staring at her and she could not do it. Pursing her lips, she ordered, "Close your eyes." Xianxia's long eyelashes fluttered and a strange emotion flashed across his long and narrow eyes. He stared at her for 2 seconds and then closed his eyes. Jiuqi pursed her lips and smiled. She used the gauze soaked in alcohol to wipe his neck gently. She looked so serious that it was as if she was treating a precious treasure. As the cold gauze moved on his body, the coolness spread and the boiling heat in his body was alleviated. Occasionally, her fingertips would touch his skin and create ripples in his heart. He felt that the woman beside him was not a stranger, as if they had known each other in their previous lives. Jiuqi carefully avoided his wounds. After wiping his body, she covered him with the blanket. Just as she was about to get up, he suddenly grabbed her wrist and asked in a hoarse voice, "Can you sing?" The flush on his face had faded and his eyes were clear like a lake. He looked at her with an indifferent expression, but she felt that he was like a child who was asking for candy. She suddenly smiled. "What do you want to hear?" He thought about it seriously. "Anything is fine." The smile on her lips deepened. She sat back down beside him and sang softly. Her voice was gentle and tranquil. There was a faint melancholy in her delicate eyes, as if she was telling a touching story. His gaze gradually deepened. His heart, which had been cold for a long time, suddenly beat fiercely. Jiuqi looked at Xianxia's peaceful sleeping face and smiled. Her hand reached out to his forehead, but before she could touch him, her hand froze and the smile on her lips became bitter. "Xianxia, you said that when you see me smile, it's as if you have the whole world. Am I not the same? As long as I see you safe and sound, it's my greatest happiness." The next day, Jiuqi was awakened by the glaring sunlight. She found that she was sleeping on Xianxia's bed and there was no trace of him in the room. She hurriedly jumped out of bed and hurriedly put on a pair of slippers and ran out, shouting, "Xianxia, Xianxia!" Xianxia and fantasyaudiobook were chatting in the courtyard when they heard Jiuqi's panicked cries. They turned around and saw her in her cute plaid bear home clothes, her long messy hair draped over her shoulders as she ran out with an anxious expression. Xianxia frowned. This woman was wearing so little. Didn't she know that it was cold? For a moment, he didn't realize that there was anything wrong with her calling his name. Fantasyaudiobook was dumbfounded. He had never seen the little girl lose her composure like this. He coughed and pretended to be serious as he said, "Chi-Chi, what happened?" Attention xianxia 866. Chapter 795. Jiuqi stopped in her tracks and stared blankly at Xianxia before turning to Tang Hejia. Her cheeks suddenly turned red and she laughed awkwardly. "Haha, nothing. I just had a nightmare. You guys take your time talking. I'll go in first." Damn it, she thought Xianxia had left without saying goodbye. She didn't expect her image to be completely ruined. Also, Xianxia was really hateful. He was obviously seriously injured, but instead of lying in bed after waking up, he actually ran around and made her worry for nothing. After Jiuqi finished washing up, she saw that Xianxia and Tang Hejia had returned to the living room. She quickly went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. Because she knew that she would be staying at the Gu mansion for a while, she had asked Ruru to buy food in advance and store it in the kitchen. The vegetables and fruits in the fridge were very fresh and the rice and noodles in the cupboard were neatly arranged. Jiuqi took a deep breath and made a cheering gesture. In her previous life before she married Jiang Tianhao, she was still a pampered Mississippi. But after she got married, Jiang Tianhao didn't like her to show her face in public, so she obediently became a housewife. She learned how to do laundry, cook and clean. She simply became his personal nanny. Jiuqi shook her head to get rid of distracting thoughts and began to cook seriously. Half an hour later. In the dining room, the three of them sat around the dining table. There was fragrant millet porridge, green stir-fried cabbage, dry-fried green beans, cold cucumber and half-boiled eggs. One look and one's appetite was aroused. Tang Hejia stared at Jiuqi in disbelief. "Little Jiuqi, did you make this?" Jiuqi winked playfully. "Of course I made it. Grandfather Tang, you worked hard last night. Come eat some eggs to nourish yourself. I'll make chicken soup for you at noon." As she spoke, she put half of the egg into his bowl and then gave the other half to Xianxia. "You eat too." Xianxia looked at her charming and adorable smile, and a warm current seemed to flow through his heart. It was very comfortable and the cold and hard corners of his lips raised, then quickly straightened. Tang Hejia's eyes were brimming with tears. "Poor Chi girl. Once you have a stepmother, you will have a stepfather. You must have had a hard time all these years. When your grandfather was alive, you were a spoiled little princess. When have you ever done such a thing? Did your father and stepmother force you to do it? Just you wait, I'm going to find Ji Bowen right now to settle the score." He patted the table and left. Jiuqi quickly grabbed his arm and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Grandpa Tang, you think too much. It has nothing to do with my father and Auntie Chin. I learned to do it myself." "Really? Really?" Tang Hejia looked at her suspiciously. "Why are you learning all this?" Jiuqi pulled him to sit down and winked at him with a smile. "There's a good saying, if you want to capture a man's heart, you have to capture his stomach first. That's why I'm making plans for my future. I can't always be a rice worm who stretches out her hand and opens her mouth, can I? Girl, even if you become a rice worm, no one will dare to despise you." Although he said that, Tang Hejia still felt very gratified. He sighed and said, "Chi girl, you've grown up. If your grandfather was still alive, he would be very happy." Jiuqi's eyes reddened. Her grandparents only had one daughter, which was her mother. The couple doted on their daughter very much. When they had Jiuqi, their granddaughter, they doted on her even more. They couldn't wait to pluck the moon from the sky and give it to her. Okay, let's eat. I'll try Chi girl's cooking." Seeing her eyes redden, Tang Hejia smiled and picked up his chopsticks to change the topic. After the meal, Jiuqi washed the dishes in the kitchen. Tang Hejia forced Xianxia to lie down on the bed to recuperate. Tang Hejia glanced at the kitchen and then turned to Xianxia. His always kind face turned cold and he said in a deep voice, "Xianxia, I don't care how you got injured or who you are. If you hurt Chi-Chi, I won't let you go. You have to believe that I have the ability to do so." With Tang Hejia's keen eyes, he had long seen that Xianxia was not an ordinary person. If Xianxia and Chi-Chi became enemies, he would not let him go. He was not an ordinary military doctor. He had a military rank. Moreover, with the power and status of the Tang family in the city, it was not difficult for him to deal with Xianxia. Being threatened so blatantly, Xianxia was not displeased. Instead, he raised the corner of his lips and a faint smile appeared on his handsome face. "Mr. Tang, I Xianxia am not a villain who bites the hand that feeds him." Tang Hejia looked at him deeply as if he wanted to see through his dark eyes and see his internal organs. He slowly said, "That had better be the case. Chi-Chi is a good girl. I won't let any harm come to her." Xianxia closed his thick eyelashes and seemed to have fallen asleep. It was not until Tang Hejia walked to the door that he heard him murmur, "I won't either." Although his voice was low, it was very clear. Jiuchi had overheard everyone's conversation in the room. When she heard footsteps, she quickly blinked away the mist in her eyes. She smiled and pretended to be lighthearted as she walked up to him. "Grandpa Tang, can you stay here for lunch today?" Tang Hejia held his huge medical kit and smiled kindly. "No need. I stayed out all night. Your Granny Tang must be worried. She has been talking about you for the past few days. When you have time, come and see us." Feng er he. "Grandpa Tang," Jiuchi knew what he wanted to say and quickly interrupted him. "Grandpa Tang, I will visit you. Let me walk you to the door." She snatched the medical kit from his hand and held his arm with one hand. They walked out of the door intimately. Tang Hejia's expression was complicated. In the end, he sighed secretly. After watching the Tang family chauffeur take Tang Hejia away, Jiuchi was in a daze for a moment. In the end, she curled her lips and revealed a bright smile. The weather today was so good. It was so good to see those people who cared about her again. Shenja leaned against the headboard with his eyes slightly closed. Jiuchi thought that he had fallen asleep. She quietly walked to the bed and tucked him in. Suddenly, a deep and magnetic voice sounded in her ears. "Do you know me?" Jiuchi's heart trembled. She suddenly raised her head. His obsidian eyes looked at her seriously. She chuckled. "I don't know you. Last night was the first time we met." His tone was calm. "You called my name in the courtyard, but I never told you." Her lips curved. "You were talking in your sleep after you fainted." He raised his eyebrows and said lightly, "That's the worst lie I've ever heard." She touched his forehead to make sure that his fever had subsided. She pursed her lips and smiled. "You exposed me. I do know you. I saw your photo in the newspaper." As the eldest son of the Shin group, he had been secretly photographed by a reporter when he had just returned from abroad. Her palm was very cold. When her fingers glided over it, it felt soft like a feather. He said lightly. "Why were you in the little forest?" "My sister stole my dance partner. I felt uncomfortable, so I went to the park to relax." She explained, "I'm studying at the capital university. The school held a dance party last night." With that said, Jiuchi took a book from the desk and placed it beside his pillow. "I have to go home. Someone will come to take care of you later. If you feel bored, you can read to pass the time. By the way, what size are you wearing?" Shinja glanced at the title of the book, Red and Black. His dark eyes seemed to flash under his long eyelashes. He calmly told her his size. Jiuchi nodded and said, "I wrote my phone number on the post-it note. If you need anything, just call me. I'll be leaving first. Have a good rest." The scene of Yi Zissou and Jiang Tianhao making a fool of themselves at the gala had already made the headlines. People were saying that the rich miss was promiscuous and addicted to drugs, and that the rich man sacrificed his looks to climb up the social ladder. The pictures of the two of them kissing in disheveled clothes were described in an obscene manner. The comments were full of criticism. The two of them had now become well-known celebrities. Originally, the matter wouldn't have blown up so much. Who asked Yi Zissou to harm others and harm herself? She had hired a bunch of reporters to take pictures of Jiuchi's ugly behavior, but in the end she had gotten herself into trouble. Jiuchi's lips curled into a sneer. She turned off her phone and started the car. After driving for less than 10 minutes, her phone suddenly rang. It was Xuanhuan. "Sis, are you still at the old mansion? Something big happened at home. Dad asked you to come back quickly." "Okay, I got it. I'll be back soon." "Big sis, why aren't you asking me what happened?" Xuanhuan paused for a moment before rejoicing in her misfortune. "Yi Zissou is out of luck." Jiuchi chuckled. "I saw the live version last night. Of course, I know what happened. Han Gigai, stay in the room. Don't get yourself into trouble." "Okay sis, I'll listen to you." In less than half an hour, her car arrived at the Ji family's mansion. There was a group of reporters outside the mansion and even the gate was blocked. When they saw Jiuchi's car, they all swarmed over and asked at once. "Miss, according to the news, the second miss has had 5 boyfriends. Is this true?" "Miss, according to the news, you and Jiang Tianhao are very close. Did the second miss come between you two?" "Miss, is it true that the second miss took drugs?" Jiuchi sneered in her heart. Took drugs? Sleeping with a man in front of so many people was indeed like being drugged. She pushed open the door amidst the dazzling flashing lights. She was wearing a white wool coat, a black short skirt, a pair of sheepskin boots and a white woolen hat on her head. Her delicate face was decorated by her curly hair, making her look even more lustrous like jade. There was a faint smile on her lips, and her actions were elegant and generous, without the slightest embarrassment of being surrounded. Everyone, I believe that the innocent knows that they are innocent, and the muddy knows that they are muddy. I understand that everyone is eager to know the truth, but please understand the difficulties of the Ji family. Jiyuchi's words were ambiguous. It depended on how others interpreted it. It could be understood that she was protecting Yizisu's innocence and didn't want the reporters to disturb the Ji family anymore. It could also be understood that she was implicitly saying that Yizisu was the stepdaughter of the Ji family. Even if Yizisu's conduct was questionable, the Ji family couldn't restrain her. Those reporters were all smart people. Based on her ambiguous words, they could speculate a lot of secrets of the rich families. Welfare Xingwu 799. Chapter 796. As soon as Jiyuchi entered the door, Nanny Wu, who was guarding the door, immediately came forward. She helped her take off her coat and said in a low voice, "Miss One, the school leaders called last night. Master and Madam personally went to the school to pick up second Miss One. Early this morning, a group of reporters came outside the house. Master was so angry that he didn't even eat breakfast and went straight to the study. Madam scolded second Miss One and brought breakfast to the study, but she quickly brought it out." Jiyuchi nodded. "Nanny Wu, where's Ahan?" Young master went back to his room to read after breakfast. Jiyuchi nodded and said, "Nanny Wu, ask the kitchen to prepare breakfast and send it to the study. I'll go see Dad first." Nanny Wu nodded and trotted away. When Jiyuchi went upstairs, she bumped into Xiaoro. Seeing that there was no one around, she said in a low voice, "Xiaoro, have you prepared the things I asked you to prepare?" "Yes." Although Xiaoro was curious why Miss wanted to prepare men's clothes, she cleverly didn't ask. Jiyuchi smiled appreciatively. "Very good. Xiaoro, send those things to the old house. I have a friend who lives there. Please take good care of him. If anyone asks, tell them that I asked you to go shopping." With that, her eyes moved slightly and she whispered a few words in Xiaoro's ear. "Okay, I got it." Xiaoro glanced in the direction of Yizisu's room and said in a low voice, "Yuchi, will Miss One find out about that?" Jiyuchi smiled. "Don't be afraid. She won't find out. Xiaoro, I won't let her hurt you. Be careful. Don't let her find out that you're working for me." Xiaoro was moved and nodded heavily. Jiyuchi knocked on the study door with breakfast and said softly, "Dad, I'm Chichi. Can I come in?" Ji Bowen's tired voice came from the study. "Come in." Jiyuchi pushed the door open and entered. She saw Ji Bowen standing in front of the floor-to-ceiling window with a cigarette between his fingers. The room was filled with the smell of smoke. The sunlight shone through the curtains and shone on his body. She suddenly realized that there were white hairs on his head. She suddenly felt a little guilty. As a child, she had always been protected by her father, but she had never been filial to him. She sniffled and put the breakfast tray on the desk. She walked behind him and massaged his shoulders. She said softly, "Dad, I heard from Nanny Wu that you haven't eaten anything. It's not good for your health. Let's eat something first, okay?" Ji Bowen's fingers that were holding the cigarette trembled, and the ashes of the cigarette fell to the floor. His daughter's hand was massaging his shoulders and it was very comfortable. The irritation in his heart also dissipated a little. "After hearing what you said, it seems that I'm really hungry. I've already prepared it for you. Dad, please help yourself." Jiyuchi beamed. She took his arm and walked to the desk. Ji Bowen smiled. He actually didn't have much of an appetite, but when he saw his daughter looking at him expectantly, he turned his anger into appetite. He drank a glass of milk and ate a sandwich. Jiyuchi didn't mention Yizisu. She thought about how xianxia still had to recuperate in the Gu mansion for a few days. She had to find an excuse to go to the Gu mansion. She thought about it and said, "Dad, I want to renovate the Gu mansion. I saw that the flowers and plants in the yard were a little messy last night, and the paint on the door was peeling." Ji Bowen nodded. "The Gu mansion is a memento that your grandfather left for you and your sister. It should be well renovated. I'll find time to arrange this." Jiyuchi quickly said, "It's okay, Dad. Let me arrange it. I've never done this kind of thing before. It's also a kind of training." Ji Bowen's smile deepened. "That's good. I'll leave this matter to you. Just tell me how much money you need." The atmosphere between father and daughter was very good. Ji Bowen temporarily forgot about his troubles. However, in the other room a storm was brewing. "What's going on? How did you get involved with Jiang Tianhao?" Ever since she brought Yizisu back last night, Qin Tingfang had been thinking of ways to appease Ji Bowen's anger. She hadn't had a chance to ask her daughter what happened. Yizisu's eyes were red and swollen. At the mention of this matter, she began to cry again. She choked and said, "I don't know what happened either. Tianhao and I were dancing. As we were dancing, I suddenly felt very hot. My heart was very irritable. When I woke up, Xianhao and I were already. Yizisa didn't dare to recall that scene. She and Xianhao were almost naked. The two of them were tightly hugging each other and kissing wildly. If someone hadn't splashed cold water on them to wake them up, they would have done something inappropriate in public. When they separated in shock and panic, they were faced with people's mocking and accusations as well as the sound of camera shutters. "Alright, stop crying," Qin Tingfang scolded irritably. She frowned and thought for a moment. Then she sneered. "This must be the doing of that Jiuchi. She already knew that there was a problem with the perfume you gave her, so she swapped the two of your perfume. So, the person in trouble is you." Yi Zissou was yelled at and her sobs stopped abruptly. She widened her eyes in disbelief. "It can't be. She always trusted me, idiot." Qin Tingfang glared at her. "She's pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger. If she didn't pretend to be close to you, would you lower your guard against her? This ***. It seems like we underestimated her in the past." A few days ago, Qin Tingfang had specially prepared 2 identical bottles of Chanel perfume. One of the bottles had a hallucinogen added to it. This hallucinogen was colorless and odorless, and was not harmful to the body. However, if the user drank alcohol, the hallucinogen would become an aphrodisiac. Originally, Yi Zissou had given the added perfume to Jiuchi. She wanted Jiuchi to make a fool of herself at the gala. They even hired reporters intending to blow up the matter and ruin Jiuchi's reputation. Even if Ji Bowen doted on his daughter, he would definitely be unhappy with Jiuchi, who knew that the perfume would be swapped, and the one who would be ruined would be Yi Zissou. Yi Zissou thought about it carefully and felt that Qin Tingfang's words made sense. She said angrily, "Jiuchi, that ***, how dare she deceive me? I won't let her off. Mom, she made me lose face this time. I will pay her back double." Qin Tingfang frowned. "Let's put the matter of dealing with Jiuchi aside for the time being." "What?" Yi Zissou's voice was sharp. "Mom, your daughter is being bullied by that ***. Are you going to let her off just like that?" Qin Tingfang poked her forehead with her finger and said angrily, "How did I give birth to such a stupid daughter like you? The most important thing now is not to deal with Jiuchi, but to think of a way to solve your problem. You may be happy to be pointed at by others, but I can't afford to lose face." Yi Zissou hugged Qin Tingfang's arm in an attempt to please her. She giggled and said, "Mom, I knew you wouldn't leave me in the lurch. Mom, you're the best." Qin Tingfang pulled her arm away and said, "Get off me. I get annoyed when I see you," but her expression softened a lot. Yi Zissou could naturally see the change in her mood, so she acted even more coquettishly to please her. In the study, Jiuchi danced and talked about interesting things in school to make Ji Bowen happy. The father and daughter were laughing together when suddenly there was a knock on the door. Jiuchi quickly said, "Dad, I'll open the door." Qin Tingfang stood at the door with a tray of snacks. When she saw Jiuchi, she smiled kindly. "Yuchi, I brought some food for you and your father." "Thank you, Auntie." Jiuchi smiled brightly and reached out to take the tray in her hand. She had no intention of inviting her in. Qin Tingfang's smile froze. She dodged her hand and said gently, "Be careful, it's hot. Let me take it." As she spoke, she pushed her shoulder to the right, seemingly inadvertently pushing Jiuchi away from the door. Jiuchi slammed into the door with a loud bang. Ji Bowen was shocked. He walked quickly to Jiuchi. "Chichi, are you okay? Where does it hurt?" "Dad, don't be nervous. I'm fine." Jiuchi rubbed her sore arm pitifully and squeezed out an exaggerated smile. In Ji Bowen's eyes, this smile looked like his daughter forcing a smile so that he wouldn't worry. He was distressed and angry. His gaze suddenly turned to Qin Tingfang, who looked stunned. He scolded, "Tingfang, what are you doing?" Qin Tingfang opened her mouth and was about to speak when Jiuchi spoke first. "Dad, don't be angry. It's not Andy's fault. It's all my fault for blocking Andy's way." Qin Tingfang's face turned pale. How could she not tell that Jiuchi was speaking up for her on the surface, but in reality she was confirming that she had pushed Jiuchi. Sure enough, Ji Bowen's expression turned even uglier. Seeing that he was about to explode, Jiuchi hugged his arm and acted coquettishly. "Dad, don't be angry with Auntie. Auntie didn't do it on purpose. Besides, I only bumped into her. I didn't hurt anywhere." How was this persuasion? It was clearly adding fuel to the fire. Qin Tingfang was fuming. She knew that she had been tricked by the little ***, but she still had to smile apologetically. "Chichi, I'm really sorry. Auntie didn't do it on purpose." "Auntie, don't worry. Of course, I know you didn't do it on purpose. You love me so much, so how could you intentionally bump into me?" People say that stepmothers are ruthless, but you're the best stepmother I've ever seen. Jiuqi smiled innocently. Her flattery made Qin Tingfang extremely depressed. Looking at such a sensible daughter, Ji Bowen nodded comfortingly. Jiuqi knew when to stop. She didn't expect her father to see Qin Tingfang's ugly side in one go. She wanted to slowly plant a seed of disgust in his heart. One day this seed would bloom and bear fruit, completely destroying their relationship. She knew that Qin Tingfang wanted to discuss Yi Zisu's matter with her father, so she very considerately left them some private space. Jiuqi walked to the stairs and heard a woman's shrill scream from downstairs. "It's you? You're the one who harmed me." Her eyelids twitched. "Interesting. What kind of game did Yi Zisu want to play?" Yi Zisu wore a white dress and stood gracefully in the middle of the living room. She pointed her finger at the young maid kneeling on the floor. Her face was filled with anger, and her voice trembled from agitation. "What? Why did you harm me? What did I do wrong to you?" Jiuqi crossed her arms and leaned against the railing. The corners of her lips curled up playfully as she looked at the maid, Xiaofang. In her previous life she was Qin Tingfang and her daughter's lackey. Xiaofang trembled, her face filled with fear as she begged for mercy. "Second miss, I beg you please spare me. I didn't do it on purpose, I just... Before she could finish her words, her tears had already flowed down. Hangcha 866. Chapter 797. Yi Zisu said angrily, "What are you? If you don't tell me the truth, I'll send you to the police station immediately." "No, Second Mississippi." Xiaofeng hurriedly knelt a few steps forward and hugged Yi Zisu's calf. She cried and begged, "Second miss, I beg you please forgive me. I was just confused for a moment." Yi Zisu's expression changed. She raised her arm and slapped Xiaofeng hard on the face. She said sternly, "You caused me so much trouble, and now you want to erase everything by saying that you were confused for a moment? Do you think I'm a fool?" Xiaofeng cried with a bright red handprint on her face. She didn't defend herself and just kept kowtowing, begging Yi Zisu to let her go. Jiuqi's smile deepened. As she expected, Qin Tingfang and her daughter were unwilling to admit defeat and started to fight back. "What are you doing?" Ji Bowen appeared at the staircase with a gloomy face. His sharp gaze swept over Xiaofeng's red and swollen cheeks. He looked at Yi Zisu with even more displeasure. "Miss, a rich man's daughter actually hit and scolded a servant. Even he heard it from upstairs. What a scandal." Zisu, who had always been gentle and magnanimous, seemed to have changed into a different person. He was really disappointed. Speaking of which, this was also Qin Tingfang's responsibility as a mother. Thinking of this, he turned to look at Qin Tingfang, who was standing next to him. The displeasure in his eyes was self-evident. Qin Tingfang saw that the situation wasn't good. She quickly put on a guilty expression and deliberately scolded, "Zisu, what are you doing? Why are you making such a ruckus?" Yi Zisu's eyelashes fluttered and tears filled her eyes. She said pitifully, "Mom, Uncle, I found out something so I got too excited." "I'm sorry." Qin Tingfang asked in surprise, "What is it? Is it related to Xiaofeng?" Yi Zisu's eyes were brimming with tears. She bit her lips and wanted to say something but couldn't. She could only stomp her feet and say in embarrassment and anger, "Xiaofeng, you say it. Say what you did in front of everyone again." Xiaofeng's entire body trembled. She lay on the ground, not daring to raise her head or speak. She could only kowtow and beg for mercy. Ji Bowen frowned and scolded in a deep voice, "Stand up and explain everything clearly." Ji Bowen rarely lost his temper at the servants, but once he lost his temper, no one dared to provoke him. Xiaofeng knew his character very well, so she didn't dare to escape anymore. She stood up timidly, lowered her head and stammered, "Master, madam, it's my fault. I added hallucinogens and second miss perfume, which made her make a fool of herself at the party. It's all my fault. I'm sorry." Ji Bowen's pupils shrank, and his face was so gloomy that water could be squeezed out of it. Qin Tingfang rushed up with red eyes. "You damned woman, how dare you harm my daughter? I'll fight it out with you." Mom, don't be agitated." Yi Zisu quickly stopped her and looked at Ji Bowen with expectation and trust. "Mom, I believe that uncle will definitely stand up for me." Ji Bowen's expression relaxed, and his tone became even more severe. "Xiaofeng, why did you do this?" Xiaofeng shrank back and said in a trembling voice, I hate Second Mississippi. I accidentally broke a vase a few days ago, and she asked the butler to deduct half of my salary. I worked so hard to earn my hard-earned money and she deducted it just like that. I hate her." Ji Bowen called the butler over, and the butler testified that such a thing had indeed happened. Jiuqi, who had been watching the drama for a long time, raised her eyebrows. The motive for the crime sounded quite reasonable. She glanced at Yi Zissou, who had an aggrieved expression that said, "I was framed," and then at Qin Tingfang, who looked furious. The corners of her lips curled up slightly and she said gently, "Dad, I have a few questions to ask Xiaofeng." "Can I?" Ji Bowen nodded. In fact, he also had doubts about this matter, and he wanted to hear his daughter's opinion. Jiuqi's voice suddenly became stern. "Xiaofeng, raise your head." Xiaofeng's body trembled. She slowly raised her head and her eyes were red. She looked a little pitiful. Jiuqi looked straight into her eyes and said, "Since you've admitted that you drugged her, tell me, where did you buy the medicine, when did you buy it, when did you drug her? Did anyone testify for you? How did second miss find out?" The series of questions shot at Xiaofeng like bullets. She couldn't help clenching her fingers in panic and mumbling, I contacted the seller through the internet. I bought it on the 22nd and drugged it on the 23rd. No one testified. I've been hiding it from everyone." As she spoke, she knelt on the ground with a thud and sobbed, "Eldest young miss, I didn't know that the matter would blow up to this extent. I was scared, so I confessed my mistake to second young Mississippi master. Madam, I've let the G family down. I've let second miss down. Please spare me on account of my loyalty and diligence in the past few years." Jiuqi sneered. "Your salary was deducted because of your mistake, and you're waiting for an opportunity to take revenge on your master. You call this loyalty? Xiaofeng, when you did all this, have you ever thought about your parents? They'll be laughed at for having a daughter like you. They'll never be able to raise their heads. You still have a brother in high school, right? If he knows that his sister is in prison and the family's source of income is cut off, will he still be in the mood to study? No, he'll drop out of school and go out to work at a young age. He'll become the second you." Jiuqi's questions were like iron hammers pounding on Xiaofeng's heart. Even though she had received a sum of money to ensure that her family would not have to worry about food and clothing, she still collapsed to the ground in fear. However, she had already come this far and could no longer turn back. She gritted her teeth, kneeled a few steps and threw herself at Jiuqi's feet. She cried and begged, "Eldest miss, please spare me. You were the one who told me to do this. I was only following your orders. Please don't leave me alone." Jiuqi stared at Xiaofeng expressionlessly. Her eyes were getting colder. "Xiaofeng, I've already given you a chance to tell the truth, but you're so stubborn. Don't blame me for being cold-blooded and heartless." Yi Zissou smirked proudly. Jiuqi, let's see what else you have to say." Qin Tingfang clenched her fists in anger. She had only wanted Xiaofeng to take the blame for drugging her, but now Xiaofeng had implicated Jiuqi. It was obvious that Zissou had instructed her. Zissou was an idiot. Why didn't she understand that Ji Bowen doted on Jiuqi so much that he wouldn't believe a servant's words? This would only backfire and make Ji Bowen suspect them instead. As expected, Ji Bowen, who had always been lenient to his servants, was furious. He kicked Xiaofeng's shoulder and sent her to the ground. "You evil servant, how dare you frame Miss? Old Wang, call the police immediately and send this evil servant to the police station." Xiaofeng was in so much pain that she couldn't move at all. She was still shouting that she was innocent. Ji Bowen was furious and ordered the butler to gag her mouth. Even after the police car left with Xiaofeng, Ji Bowen's anger still hadn't subsided. Jiuqi hugged his arm and acted coquettishly and cutely. Finally he couldn't help but laugh. Jiuqi leaned against his arm and said emotionally, "Dad, thank you for believing in me." Ji Bowen stroked her hair lovingly. "You're my daughter. Of course I believe in you." He had already informed the police chief and asked them to interrogate Xiaofeng. If Xiaofeng was stubborn and refused to let go of Yuqi, he would let her know that the Ji family wasn't to be trifled with. Jiuqi's eyes turned red and she mumbled, "Dad, I must have offended Xiaofeng somehow. That's why she framed me like this." Ji Bowen's heart skipped a beat. Yuqi was innocent and couldn't see through the strangeness of the matter, but he did. Xiaofeng said that she felt guilty and confessed to Yi Zissou about drugging her. If Yuqi was really behind it, why didn't Xiaofeng say it from the beginning? Why did she wait until she was convicted of drugging Yuqi? If he didn't trust Yuqi and Yuqi was accused of framing her sister, then Yi Zissou would be the one to benefit from this matter. His feelings told him that Yi Zissou was a kind girl and wouldn't do such a thing. However, his rationality told him that Yi Zissou was suspicious. If Yi Zissou had directed this show, then did Qin Tingfang know about it? Ji Bowen's feelings were complicated. In the end, his feelings overwhelmed his rationality and he convinced himself that Qin Tingfang and her mother were innocent. However, there was a thorn in his heart. Chen Tingfang knew that things weren't going well, so she acted even more submissive and tried to please Ji Bowen and Ji Yuqi gently. Ji Yuqi didn't want to see her fake smile, so she found an excuse to leave. When Ji Yuqi arrived at the mansion, Ruru was carrying 2 bags of trash. When she saw Ji Yuqi, she quickly threw down the trash bags and walked up to her with a smile. "Chichi, you're here. Is Yi Zissou in big trouble?" Ji Yuqi pursed her lips and smiled. She briefly explained what happened in the Ji family and said, "Although we won this time, we can't let our guard down. They won't admit defeat so easily." Ruru nodded heavily. She admired Ji Yuqi very much. At first, Yuqi guessed that Yi Zissou was going to use perfume to plot against her, so she asked Ruru to switch the perfume with the knockout powder. She also guessed that Yi Zissou wouldn't let it go and might find someone to take the blame. Therefore, she asked Ruru to investigate the situation of all the servants in the house. That was how Yuqi knew about Xiaofang's family. Even if Ruru didn't see it with her own eyes, she could imagine the scene of Yi Zissou's failure. Ji Yuqi looked in the direction of the bedroom. "Ruru, how is Xianxia?" "Mr. Xin is in good spirits, but he doesn't have a good appetite. He only ate half a bowl of rice for lunch. Oh, by the way, Mr. Xin asked me to burn the clothes he changed into. Those clothes were stained with blood and bullet holes." Ruru's heart was pounding when she burned them. She moved closer to Ji Yuqi and whispered, "Chichi, that person was shot. Could he be from the underground organization? Will we get into trouble?" "No, he won't. Xianxia is a good person. Someone wanted to harm him, so he got injured." Ji Yuqi's tone was particularly serious. "Ruru, he is my friend. He won't harm us. Come and see." Xinhu 799. Chapter 798. Xiao knew what she meant and hurriedly said, "I understand. I won't tell anyone." Ji Yuqi smiled gratefully and then asked Xiao to find some men's clothes, wash them and hang them on the clothesline in the yard. Xiao didn't understand her intention. She blinked mysteriously. "Fishing. This is the bait." Xiao touched her head. She still didn't understand, but she believed in Yuqi. Stepping into the room, hot air hit her in the face. Xianxia was lying on the mahogany recliner with his eyes closed. His long eyelashes cast a faint shadow under his eyelids. His handsome face was like a sculpture. Ji Yuqi walked to his side gently and bent down to take the book on his lap. As soon as her fingers touched the book, he opened his eyes. His pair of black gem-like eyes didn't have the confusion of just waking up. There was only innate coldness and indifference. Her heart couldn't help but tremble. She pursed her lips and smiled. "You're awake?" "Yes." An imperceptible warmth appeared in his cold eyes. Actually, he hadn't fallen asleep. He even heard her and Xiao's conversation outside the door. She trusted him. This knowledge made his mood exceptionally good. Ji Yuqi put the book aside and took a blanket to cover his legs. She said gently, "I heard from Xiao that you don't have a good appetite. I know a good private restaurant. What do you want to eat? I'll get them to send it over." Xianxia's thin lips curved slightly. "Do you know how to make century egg and lean meat porridge?" Ji Yuqi raised her eyebrows and smiled. "Yes. Wait for a while. I'll be back soon." The soft and glutinous century egg and lean meat porridge was cooked quickly. There was also a plate of cold cucumber and a plate of stir-fried broccoli on the table. The emerald green color and fragrant aroma aroused Xianxia's appetite. One look and one could tell that he was well educated. Even though his chest was injured, his sitting posture was extremely upright and his movements were extremely elegant, just like a high and mighty aristocrat. Watching him eat was a kind of enjoyment. Ji Yuqi sat opposite him and rested her chin on one hand. She didn't hide the smile on her face. She was very happy that his appetite had been stimulated. Under a certain someone's burning gaze, Xianxia was not embarrassed at all. He casually and elegantly enjoyed the delicious food. As the warm porridge entered his esophagus, even his heart was warmed. He occasionally raised his eyes to meet her gaze, and the smile on her face became even more brilliant. Her relaxed eyebrows seemed to be sprinkled with sunlight, and her exquisite facial features had a different kind of peerless beauty. He couldn't help but curl his lips in response to this extremely sincere smile, faintly feeling that something was out of his control. The setting sun shone softly on the window lattice, and the room was filled with light and dreamy music. Ji Yuqi and Xianxia were lying on 2 reclining chairs side by side, each holding a book in their hands. The atmosphere was indescribably warm and harmonious. After dinner, Ji Yuqi called her father and told her that she would stay in the old house tonight and would not go home. Before ending the call, Ji Yuqi's father suddenly said, "Chichi, no matter what happens, Dad will believe in you." Ji Yuqi thought that he was talking about what happened in the morning and felt very touched. Then she called Ruru, who had already returned to the villa, and reminded her of some things. When she called, she didn't have any intention of avoiding suspicion in front of Xianxia. Xianxia also acted as if he hadn't heard anything and browsed the news on his phone. When he saw the headline, Miss G made a fool of herself at the ball, the mastermind behind it is Big Miss G, his brows furrowed slightly. Jiuqi hung up the phone. Seeing that Xianxia didn't look too good, she thought that his wound was hurting again and hurriedly brought him painkillers. Xianxia shook his head and pursed his thin lips. He wanted to say something but stopped. She had a feeling that he didn't want her to be hurt. The way he looked at her was a little strange. It seemed to be sympathy? Jiuqi blinked in confusion. What's wrong with you? Xianxia wanted to hide it from her, but on second thought, if he didn't tell her now, she might be even more hurt if she found out about it at another occasion. He handed his phone to her and stared at her with his dark eyes, hiding an imperceptible worry. Jiuqi took the phone curiously and glanced at it briefly. The maid, Xiaofeng, admitted that Jiuqi had instructed her to frame Yi Zisu. Xiaofeng also said that Jiuqi had always been secretly in love with Jiang Tianhao, but Jiang Tianhao's heart was on Yi Zisu, so Jiuqi deliberately played tricks to embarrass them. Jiuqi's expression didn't change, but the little person in her heart was laughing coldly. Humph, Xiaofeng had already been taken to the police station. She couldn't have leaked the information to the media, unless someone impersonated her and threw this so-called evidence to the media. Yi Zisu was really ruthless. After one failed move, she came up with another. Xianxia had been paying attention to her expression. Seeing her calm face, a look of admiration flashed in his eyes. He said lightly, "Do you need my help?" Jiuqi was slightly stunned. In her previous life, whenever she was in trouble, Xianxia was always the first to appear in front of her and solve it for her. In this life, she didn't want to implicate him, and she didn't want him to see her vicious and cold-blooded. She pursed her lips and shook her head gently. "No need. I'll handle this matter myself. You should rest. I live next door. If you need anything, just call me." The snow-white walls, the empty corridor, and the sound of footsteps became clearer. Jiuqi stood at the end of the corridor in a white hospital gown and looked at the familiar figure walking out of the smoke. Her heart beat rapidly and her throat tightened. Xianxia. She ran towards that person with ecstasy as if she had been searching for him for thousands of years. That person turned his head. His pair of empty gray eyes were unfocused, and the indifferent expression on his handsome face made her panic. "Xianxia, your eyes?" She froze in place in shock. She reached out to grab his arm, but she grabbed empty air. His figure had quickly retreated a few meters and then disappeared into the fog. "Xianxia." Jiuqi abruptly woke up from her dream. Her entire body was drenched in sweat, and her mind was still filled with boundless despair. She threw off the blanket and got out of bed. She ran out of the room barefoot and pounded on the door next door like a madwoman. Xianxia was awakened by the woman's panicked cries. His gaze suddenly turned cold. He quickly walked to the door and opened it. Before he could open his mouth to ask what had happened, a delicate body with a cold aura had already thrown itself into his arms. She hugged him and wailed. "Xianxia, Xianxia." She cried heartbreakingly as she called out his name over and over again. The fear, and attachment in her voice made his chest tighten uncontrollably. He slowly raised his left hand that was originally hanging stiffly by his side and wrapped it around her waist. His bottomless eyes stared at the woman in his arms. Her face was pressed against his chest, and her hot tears soaked the white bandage. His wound was throbbing with pain, but for some reason he couldn't bear to push her away. Her cries of despair gradually weakened, turning into soft sobs. By the time Jiuqi completely woke up, she was already lying in Xianxia's arms, sitting on the edge of his bed. "Sorry, I just had a nightmare." She frantically withdrew from his arms and awkwardly wiped the tears from her face. She glanced at his chest in embarrassment and mumbled, "I just touched your wound. Is it okay?" Xianxia looked at her red nose and red eyes like a rabbit's. He couldn't help but frown. Instead of answering, he asked, "What nightmare did you have? Why are you crying like that?" Of course, Jiuqi wouldn't tell him that she was reborn. She also wouldn't tell him that ever since she was reborn, she hadn't had a good night's sleep. Every night, she was tormented by nightmares and tortured by hatred. Her mind was constantly stretched taut, afraid that if she took one wrong step, she would step into the trap that Qin Tingfang and her daughter had set for her. Every time she faced Yi Zisu and Jiang Tianhao, she had to use all her rationality to suppress the resentment in her heart. She also had to pretend that she didn't know anything. No one knew how hard it was for her. She lowered her eyes slightly to hide the bone-piercing sadness in her eyes. The corners of her lips stiffened as she said in a low voice, "I dreamt that a monster was chasing me. I asked you for help and called out your name loudly." Her voice became lower and lower as it trembled. "But you shook off my hand and disappeared." Under the light, she exuded an indescribable sadness. The strong loneliness in her words made his heart tremble. His chest felt stuffy and his heart seemed to beat even harder. He couldn't help but reach out his hand. His warm palm landed on her soft hair and gently pressed it. His deep voice was as pleasant as a cello. "Don't cry. Dreams are all fake." After saying that, he seemed to sense that something was wrong. He quickly retracted his hand and supported his chin with his left hand. He coughed softly, and the tips of his fair ears were dyed a light pink. Fortunately, Jiuchi had her head lowered and didn't notice. The next morning, when Jiuchi saw xianxia, she suddenly recalled the scene of her crying in his arms last night. Her cheeks instantly burned. Fortunately, xianxia didn't mention a word. It was as if nothing had happened last night. The two of them finished breakfast in silence. Jiuchi tidied up the kitchen and saw xianxia standing in the courtyard. Beside him, little yellow flowers were blooming around the Four Seasons osmanthus. The cold fragrance was refreshing. He was wearing a white coat and black trousers. The contrasting colors of white and black made him look even more beautiful. He leaned lazily and elegantly against the tree trunk. His gaze was distant, as if he was thinking about something. Seeing his obsidian-like eyes, Jiuchi's heart trembled. She quickly lowered her head to hide her emotions. After a while, she looked up and revealed a gentle smile. "Xianxia, I have 2 classes in the morning. I'll go to school. I'll be back early. What do you want to eat for lunch? I'll buy it on the way back." Xianxia slowly retracted his gaze from the sky and looked at her intently. "Do you know how to make West Lake vinegar fish and mushroom fried chicken?" Jiuchi raised her eyebrows. This man was really impolite. He treated her as his personal chef. However, why didn't she feel unhappy at all? Instead, she was very happy. Jiuchi parked the car in the school's parking lot and then went to the dormitory to get her textbooks. Wang Jing and Xia Yin, who used to have a good relationship with her, looked as if they had seen a ghost when they saw her. They kept their distance and looked at her with disdain. On the other hand, Lin Yushi, who had never interacted with her, said good morning indifferently. "Good morning." Jiuchi smiled brightly. "Yushi, let's go together, okay?" Lin Yushi was slightly startled. Then she faintly said, "Okay." After the two of them went out, they heard Wang Jing whisper, "Shameless. I didn't expect her to be so vicious." Lin Yushi turned to look at Jiuchi and calmly explained, "The news said that you ordered the servants to poison Yi Zisu." They believed it. Jiuchi knew that Wang Jing was scolding her, but she didn't care. In her previous life, she saw Wang Jing and Xia Yan's true colors. Their family backgrounds weren't as good as hers and they liked to hug her thighs. They always said in her ear, "Yuchi, your Louis Vuitton bag is so beautiful. Can you lend it to me? And Yuchi, your Givenchy dress is so beautiful. Can I try it on?" The implied meaning was self-evident. She was generous when it came to money and gave them a lot of gifts. However, later on, when Jiuchi caused a scandal at the ball, the two of them were the happiest to hit her when she was down. Jiuchi smiled faintly. "Let them scold me. No matter how hard they scold me, I won't lose a piece of flesh." Lin Yushi was startled. "Jiuchi, you've changed. If it was in the past, you would definitely quarrel with them." Jiuchi playfully blinked. "You were bitten by a dog. You can't bite back, right?" Lin Yushi's beautiful face, which had always been cold, revealed a smile. "Of course not. You'll only disgust yourself if you bite back." Jiuchi held her hand and said seriously, "Yushi, thank you." She thanked her for not saying anything bad about her in her previous life. She also thanked her for believing in her in this life. Lin Yushi didn't say anything and just held her hand. On the way to the school building, countless disdainful and malicious gazes intertwined on Jiuchi. They pointed at her and whispered about her vicious behavior. Jiuchi walked in the midst of the scolding with a calm expression. Lin Yushi held her hand comfortingly and she responded with a warm smile. "Jiuchi, you're too vicious. I didn't expect you to be this kind of person." An angry and low male voice suddenly sounded. Jiuchi looked at the man not far away with a complicated expression. He was Tang Feng. He was Tang Hejie's grandson and Jiuchi's childhood sweetheart. The two of them had agreed to be engaged when they were very young. They were originally very close and Jiuchi had always liked him. However, everything changed after Yi Zisu entered the Ji family. Tang Feng became more and more distant from Yuchi and closer to Yi Zisu. He became Yi Zisu's guardian angel. He told Yuchi more than once that he wouldn't marry her. Yuchi thought that she wasn't good enough, so she studied hard and tried to change her bad temper. However, he said, "It's useless no matter how good you are. The person I like is not you." Later, Yuchi and Gu Fifan caused a scandal at the ball. Tang Feng didn't even want to maintain the harmony on the surface. Ignoring the Tang family's objections, he proposed to the Ji family to cancel the engagement. Ji Bowen felt that his daughter had wronged Tang Feng, so he could only agree. After the engagement was cancelled, Tang Feng openly pursued Yi Zissou. The two of them caused a stir in the school. Ji Yuchi would always become Yi Zissou's foil. One was a slut, the other was a noble white lotus. She was trampled into the mud by Yi Zissou. Every time Ji Yuchi was hurt, Jiang Tianhao would appear like a god to save her. Slowly, she was moved by his gentleness and was intoxicated by his thoughtfulness. It could be said that Tang Feng was one of the important people who pushed Ji Yuchi into Jiang Tianhao's arms. Come and see. Xinwu 799. Chapter 799. Scenes of the past surfaced in her mind. During the darkest period of her life, she had hated Tang Feng. If it weren't for him, she wouldn't have ended up in such a miserable state. But now, seeing him angrily settling scores with her and fighting for Yi Zissou, Ji Yuchi suddenly didn't want to hate him. She only felt that he was pitiful. He loved a beautiful snake, but he was played by her and ended up in such a miserable state. He was just a pitiful person. After Ji Yuchi thought it through, the ruthless aura that she was releasing instantly retracted. She looked coldly at Tang Feng holding Yi Zissou's hand and walking in front of her. Tang Feng was very handsome with straight eyebrows and bright eyes. Because he was born into a military family and had been in the army for a few years, he exuded an awe-inspiring righteousness. He was tall and straight, standing in front of Ji Yuchi like a towering mountain. His handsome eyebrows were tightly knitted, and his deep eyes were surging with anger. Ji Yuchi, when did you become so vicious? Just because I don't love you, you want to destroy Zissou? Ji Yuchi looked at him in amusement. Tang Feng was the most outstanding grandson of the Tang family. Since young he had a sense of superiority. To put it nicely, it was arrogance. To put it bluntly, it was self-righteous. She chuckled. Tang Feng, you're thinking too much. Her gaze was filled with pity, and her smile was filled with faint mockery. This made Tang Feng, who was favored by the heavens, very uncomfortable. How could his little tail, who had been following him around since young, look at him with such a gaze? Clearly, she was very sad when he said that he wouldn't marry her some time ago. That's right, it must be a disguise. Zissou had said that Ji Yuchi was very good at disguising herself. There was a hint of disgust in Tang Feng's eyes as he said with a cold face, Ji Yuchi, do you know how important reputation is to a girl? You actually framed Zissou and caused her to lose face at the ball. I order you to apologize to her immediately. Big brother, you forget it? Big sister didn't do it on purpose. Don't make things difficult for her. Yi Zissou hugged Tang Feng's arm and timidly hid beside him. She was like a delicate little white flower. Tears were about to fall from her beautiful big eyes. She was really lovable. Sure enough, when Tang Feng saw her tear-stained and delicate appearance, the love and pity in his heart grew even stronger. The gaze he used to look at Ji Yuchi became even colder. Ji Yuchi, apologize immediately. Ji Yuchi said indifferently, how do you want to apologize? Do you want me to go to the radio station and admit in front of all the teachers and students that I'm a vicious and shameless woman who framed my gentle and beautiful sister? Or, do you want me to kneel in front of all these people and beg for your forgiveness? How does that sound? Tang Feng was stunned. He had never thought of that. When he was young, he also liked his little sister Yuchi. She was obedient and cute, but later on, she changed. She became vicious, unruly, and always bullied Zissou. He came to find her full of anger and asked her to apologize to Zissou. It was not only to seek justice for Zissou, but also because he was heartbroken for her. Even so, he had never thought of embarrassing her in front of the whole school. His eyes were dark and unreadable. His lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but Yi Zissou beat him to it and said, No, big sister, big brother, you didn't mean that. Don't be angry with big brother, you okay? It's all my fault. Ji Yuchi didn't even look at her. She stared straight at Tang Feng and smiled. Her smile was very gentle and poignant. Big brother Tang Feng, how do you want me to apologize? Just tell me and I'll do it. Big brother Tang Feng. In his memory, that delicate little girl always called him so softly. Tang Feng's heart softened and his expression softened. Yuchi, you did something wrong, so you should apologize. Say sorry to Zissou. Ji Yuchi sneered in her heart. Sure enough, all men liked Yi Zissou's gentle and lovely style. The corner of her lips curled up slightly as she said softly, Alright, I'll do whatever big brother Tang Feng says. Then she looked at Yi Zissou and smiled gently. Zissou, I'm sorry. Yi Zissou, I'll let you be arrogant for a few more days. The more arrogant you are now, the more miserable you'll be when that matter is exposed. It's okay, big sister. I've never blamed you. Yi Zissou had a bright smile on her face, but she was vomiting blood in her heart. She deliberately urged Tang Feng to find trouble with Jiuqi, not to hear her apologize, but to see them turn against each other. Jiuqi smiled at Tang Feng again. Her smile was sad. Big brother Tang Feng, although I've listened to you and apologized, I still want to make it clear. Whether you believe it or not, I've never instructed Xiaofeng to harm Zissou. She wasn't lying. She had instructed Xiaofeng ha. After saying that, without waiting for Tang Feng's response, she took Lin Yushi's hand and walked away. Tang Feng's eyes narrowed as he looked at her straight back. Even if she was submerged in the crowd, she was still very conspicuous. She was like a red plum, proud and noble, but also had a coldness that kept people 1,000 miles away. Why did he have a feeling that he had suddenly lost something? Yi Zissou shook his arm and said softly, Big brother you, I'm sorry. It's all my fault. I caused a misunderstanding between you and big sister. Tang Feng came back to his senses. It's not your fault, Zissou. Class is about to start. Let's go. For Jiuqi, this was a day full of troubles. When she and Lin Yushi walked into the classroom, a rag flew at them. Jiuqi quickly took a step forward and stood in front of Lin Yushi. Then she reached out to block it. The rag fell at her feet, but her clothes were stained with black ink. A few drops of ink even splashed on her fair cheeks. It was very eye-catching. Jiuqi, you black-hearted woman. Black really suits you. Look at her now. Doesn't she look like a dusty groundhog? Ah. Don't be like this. She's the dancing queen of this year's Christmas ball. Dancing queen? I think she's more like an old witch. Lin Yushi was shocked. She quickly took out a tissue and wiped the ink off Jiuqi's face. She quickly said, Yuchi, ignore them. I'm fine. Jiuqi's heart warmed. She did not stop her. She looked up and looked indifferently at the people who were mocking her. They were a group of rich second generations. Just because their families were rich, they acted like tyrants in school. The leader was called Xiaoren. He looked like a hooligan and treated Yi Zissou as his goddess. He could not wait to follow behind her every day. Now that their goddess was in trouble, of course they had to stand up for her. Jiuqi's eyes were cold and clear. Although her red coat was dirty and her hair was a bit messy, her aloof and otherworldly temperament and calm expression made everyone feel a little guilty. She did not question or explain. She looked straight ahead and walked step by step to the seat she was used to sitting in. Lin Yushi naturally sat beside her. The atmosphere in the classroom became strange. Xiaoren and the others who were still provoking and cursing suddenly shut their mouths. Things were not over yet. After class, Jiuqi went to the washroom. She was tidying her clothes in the cubicle when a basin of cold water fell from the sky, drenching her from head to toe. Outside the cubicle, the girl's arrogant laughter could be heard. January was the cold season. Even though there was a heater in the washroom, her face was still blue from the cold water. When she came out of the cubicle, the group of girls who were teasing her had disappeared. She looked at herself in the mirror and smiled coldly. Yuchi, are you okay? A well-defined hand appeared in front of her eyes and pushed away the wet hair covering her forehead, revealing a pair of large misty eyes. Jiuqi stared blankly at the man in front of her. His tall and slender figure and handsome face were full of worry. He took off his coat and draped it over her shivering body. He held her shoulders and anxiously called out, Yuchi? Yuchi? Tears as big as beans fell from her eyes and slowly flowed down her pale face. Her lips that had turned purple from the cold trembled. Senior? Jiang Tianhao breathed a sigh of relief. His handsome brows quickly furrowed again. He said angrily, Did they bully you? Tell me who they are. I won't let them off. Jiuqi shook her head and stubbornly wiped away her tears. Her beautiful face glowed with pride. Forget it. Don't argue with them. Senior, thank you. It was rare for the arrogant girl to show a delicate expression. She pretended to be strong, and this caused Jiang Tianhao to feel more pity for her than a delicate little white flower. His expression became gentler and his brows were full of tenderness. He said gently, Yuchi, don't think too much. Those things will pass. Jiuqi nodded, touched. Senior, you have to believe me. I didn't do those things that were reported on the news. Jiang Tianhao gently stroked the hair by her ear. Of course I believe you. Yuchi is a good girl. She would never do anything to hurt others. Jiuqi smiled through her tears. That smile was like the sun piercing through the clouds. It was dazzling and beautiful. Xuanhuan was momentarily dazed. His expression became gentler. Yuchi, I'll send you back to the dormitory. Change into a new set of clothes. Be careful not to catch a cold. Yuchi didn't reject him. She put on an expression of being touched, but deliberately restrained herself. She appeared reserved, but at the same time she revealed her special feelings for him. Xuanhuan naturally noticed this, and a surge of joy welled up in his heart. It seemed that he would soon conquer this rich young lady. It was the same in his previous life. When Yuchi was teased and walked out of the bathroom drenched, Xuanhuan appeared like a savior. He said that he believed in her. He said that he would protect her and not let her be bullied again. At an angle that Xuanhuan could not see, Yuchi's lips curled into a strange smile. Since you like to be a hero so much, I'll let you be as much as you want. In less than half an hour, the news of the student council president, Xuanhuan, sending Yuchi back to the female dormitory spread all over the school's intranet. There was also a post titled, "Mr. President, you're busy playing around with feelings. Does your mother know?" The post was pushed to the top of the forum. The post had pictures and the truth. There were pictures of Xuanhuan and Yi Zissou having a passionate conversation. There was also a shot of Xuanhuan putting on a jacket for Yuchi. The comments below the post were divided into two factions. One faction was Xuanhuan's diehard fans. They scolded Yuchi and Yi Zissou for being shameless enough to seduce their president. The other faction came out of nowhere and scolded Xuanhuan for being shameless and walking between the two beauties. In the end, the mysterious faction overwhelmed the diehard fans. All of the posts scolding Xuanhuan sprung up like bamboo shoots after a spring rain. It even alarmed the school leaders, who gave Xuanhuan a warning and criticism. Yi Zissou looked at the intimate photos of Xuanhuan and Yuchi. She was so angry that she almost crushed her silver teeth. That slut Yuchi actually seduced her senior Tianhao. She was too hateful. Why didn't she just die? Yi Zissou's hatred for Yuchi grew with each passing day. It was endless. Hangxia 866. Chapter 800. Yuchi sat in the car and browsed through the latest news on the forum. She was so happy that she thumped the steering wheel a few times. Then she beamed with joy and sent a text message to Lin Yushi. The photo of the toilet door was taken well. Thank you. And the person you found who posted the post, help me thank him too. I'll treat you to a meal another day. She could have avoided the basin of cold water in the toilet, but she chose not to. She allowed those women to do whatever they wanted to her. Otherwise, how could she have waited for Xuanhuan to walk right into her trap? Dong dong. Someone knocked on the car window. Yuchi lowered the car window and saw Gu Fifan's beautiful face. He crossed his arms and leaned lazily against the car door, looking at her with a half-smile. Yuchi raised her eyebrows. What's the matter? Gu Fifan's long and narrow peach blossom eyes narrowed and he laughed softly. Yuchi, you're burning the bridge after crossing the river. You're too heartless. You make me so sad. Looking at his teasing smile, Yuchi could not help but think of the past. In her previous life, Gu Fifan and she were both victims of embarrassing themselves at a ball. The difference was that Gu Fifan was originally a playboy, so it was not a big deal to have a few more affairs. As for her, her innocent reputation was ruined. Gu Fifan, who had been pestering her at the beginning, also abandoned her. She heard him say to his friends with her own ears, "I thought she was a chaste woman, but I didn't expect her to be so proactive. She's no different from the women I used to have. How boring." She did not hate Gu Fifan, but she did not have a good impression of him either. She hated those men who were flirtatious and only had brains. They flaunted conquering women as if conquering the world. She was expressionless and said lightly, "Mr. Gu, if you have something to say, please say it. If not, please stand aside." Gu Fifan clicked his tongue twice. "You're really heartless. Aren't you curious about who helped Lin Yushi post the post? Aren't you curious about who found the group of people who suddenly appeared to scold Xuanhuan?" Yuchi widened her eyes and looked him up and down suspiciously. He puffed out his chest proudly and combed his hair handsomely. With a proud tone he said, "That's right, it's me. I'm the handsome and elegant little white dragon Gu Fifan." The corners of Yuchi's mouth twitched and she looked unfriendly. "Why are you helping me?" "Yuchi, it's cold outside. Let me sit in the car." Gu Fifan changed his expression and blinked pitifully. He grabbed the car door with his two paws and almost wagged his tail. Yuchi couldn't help but think of the golden retriever she raised when she was a child. 3 black lines appeared on her forehead. She unlocked the car door and let the cute man sit in the passenger seat. He brought the cold air into the narrow car. He leaned against the seat and sighed with satisfaction. It's so warm in the car. Chi-Chi, what perfume are you using? It smells so good. Jiuchi suppressed the urge to throw this person out. Let's continue the topic just now. Why are you helping me? Gu Fifan chuckled and his voice was as charming as wine. First, Lin Yushi is my cousin. She has something to ask of me. As her cousin, how can I not help her? Second. He twirled a strand of her long hair with his slender fingers and said in an ambiguous tone, Xuanhuan wants to snatch a woman from me, so he should be prepared for bad luck. Jiuchi frowned. She really didn't know that Lin Yushi was Gu Fifan's cousin. Impatiently, she pulled her hair out of his hand. Did you also take credit for the school's leaders? Gu Fifan snapped his fingers and said, Smart. I only gave him a little pressure, and the head of the teaching department immediately went to talk to Jiang Tianhao. Jiuchi raised her eyebrows in amusement. She suddenly realized that Gu Fifan was a little interesting. Didn't you say that you wanted to treat me to a meal? I want to eat something that you cook. Let's do it today. He put his hands behind his head and leaned back leisurely as he looked at her with a smile. Jiuchi thought of the text message she sent to Lin Yushi, saying that she wanted to treat them to a meal. She didn't expect that it would reach his ears so quickly. She smiled brightly. Sorry I can't do it today. Let's do it tomorrow. Okay, but it's just you and me. Also, you have to cook it yourself. His slender fingers tapped the tip of her nose and then pointed at himself. Okay. Her smile became brighter. She was looking forward to tomorrow's date. She guessed that Chen Tingfang and her daughter would be looking forward to it too. As usual, Jiuchi called her father and said that she wouldn't be coming home for the next 2 days. She would be staying at the Ji family's mansion. Ji Bowen agreed very much. The news reports were all over the place, saying that Jiuchi was the mastermind. There were also a few reporters who often appeared outside the Ji family's villa. He naturally wanted to protect his daughter, so he didn't mention these things. Although he didn't mention it, Yuchi was well aware of it. She was very grateful and touched by her father's protection. In the past 2 days, Yi Zissou had recovered her reputation in school, but she didn't have a good time at home. Chen Tingfang scolded her several times, saying that she acted on her own and shouldn't have let Xiaofeng bite Jiuchi. She also shouldn't have revealed that Jiuchi had drugged her. Because it was too simple and crude, it would attract Ji Bowen's suspicion. Yi Zissou admitted her mistake on the surface, but she didn't think so in her heart. So what if Ji Bowen suspected her? In any case, Jiuchi's reputation was ruined and she had become the public enemy of the entire school. She was happy to see her being bullied miserably. Mom, I just heard Auntie Gong say that Xiaofeng has been going out these past few days to help Jiuchi. I think, is Jiuchi up to no good again? Yi Zissou massaged Chen Tingfang's shoulders to please her. Ask Auntie Gong to find someone to keep an eye on Jiuchi. These past few days she has been hiding in the old mansion. I don't know what she is up to. Chen Tingfang knew that Xiaofeng was Auntie Wu's niece. She also knew that the aunt and niece were Jiuchi's people. Last time, when Jiuchi switched the perfume, Chen Tingfang suspected that they were the ones who did it. Unfortunately, she couldn't find any evidence and could only let Xiaofeng take the blame. If she could get hold of their weakness this time, she would get rid of all of Jiuchi's people and replace them with her own people. Jiuchi bought some groceries at the market and returned to the old mansion. Just as she stepped through the door, she suddenly saw a figure flash past Xianxia's room. It was so fast that she almost thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her. She walked into the room and greeted Xianxia as usual, pretending that she didn't know that there was a stranger here. She knew that Xianxia had many secrets and that Xianxia wasn't simple, but she believed that he wouldn't harm her. That was enough. Xianxia was still leaning against the recliner with a book on his knees. His deep eyes looked at her quietly and his voice was indifferent. You've changed your clothes. Someone poured a bucket of cold water on me today. Fortunately, I kept some spare clothes in the dormitory. Her heart warmed. He looked cold, but in fact he kept many details in his heart that were easy to overlook. He couldn't help but imagine her soaking wet and shivering like a puppy. His heart felt a little gloomy and there was a nameless fire in his heart. His expression became ugly. What kind of principal is your school doing? How could he allow bullying to happen? Jiuchi couldn't help but smile. Don't be angry. I did it on purpose. Those people won't be able to hurt me. She knew that if she didn't explain, the position of principal might be changed tomorrow. Xianxia was really capable of doing such things. That principal didn't know that he had avoided a disaster, but the girl who poured cold water on Jiuchi was unlucky. 2 days later she was inexplicably expelled by the school. Xianxia glanced at Jiuchi. His dark eyes and slightly pursed lips were obviously unhappy. The smile on her lips became more obvious. He was concerned about her. That was great. They were finally no longer strangers. He suddenly stretched out his arm. She was shocked and subconsciously took a step back. He opened his fingers and there was a thin necklace around his middle finger. The pendant was a light blue sapphire. The bright and flawless gem reflected a bright light under the sun. It was dazzlingly beautiful. For you. His voice was like the sound of a cello, deep and pleasant. The sapphire symbolized calmness and bravery. It was his birthday stone and also his favorite gem. She stared at his finger in shock and suddenly didn't know what to do. He had given this necklace to her before, but that was the day before her wedding with Jianghu. Now he was giving her this necklace. What did it mean? Her expression obviously pleased him. His brows relaxed and his deep eyes sparkled. His thin lips curved into a faint smile. Come here. Her throat was dry and she shook her head. No, this is too precious. I can't accept it. His smile faded and his eyes drooped. No matter how precious something is, it's just a dead object without a compatible person. He suddenly looked up at her with a complicated gaze that she couldn't understand. I'm leaving tomorrow. You can keep this necklace as a souvenir. In her previous life, he left without saying goodbye. In this life, he told her clearly and even gave her a gift. She didn't know why he had changed so much. She knew that he was a stubborn person. Once he made a decision, no one could change it. If he wanted to give someone a gift, he would have 100 ways to make it impossible for them to reject him. She also couldn't reject him. She walked in front of him and squatted down to look at him at eye level. She saw a small version of herself and only herself in his obsidian eyes. His fingers reached to the back of her neck and skillfully fastened the necklace. He looked at it seriously and suddenly smiled. It's very beautiful. It suits you very well. She smiled back. Thank you. As usual, they ate quietly. After the meal, they strolled around the courtyard and chatted. Most of the time it was Jiuqi talking. He listened seriously and occasionally expressed his opinion. Neither of them mentioned that he was leaving tomorrow, but it seemed like they were deliberately avoiding the topic. After the stroll, they continued to lie down side by side for their afternoon nap. Jiuqi flipped through a few pages of a book and felt a little frustrated. She couldn't focus on anything, so she threw the book aside and closed her eyes to rest. Hearing the steady breathing of the person beside him, Xianxia opened his eyes and turned his head. Her petite body was curled up under the blanket. She was like a small ball, like a caterpillar. Her fluffy curly hair was draped over the pillow, making her jade-white face look even more exquisite. His brows were filled with warmth. His slender fingers gently rubbed her cheek. His voice was dreamy. Yuchi, wait for me, Beauty Novel Songshu 566. Chapter 801. The next morning, Xianxia left without saying goodbye, leaving Jiuqi standing under the osmanthus tree in a daze. For a moment, her heart felt empty. After standing in the yard for a while, she picked up her phone and dialed a number. Ruru, act according to the plan and bring them here. After setting up a trap for several days, she could finally draw in the net today. Qintingfang Yizisu, don't let me down. Jiuqi's lips curled into a strange smile. Her eyes were as cold as the stars and were frighteningly cold. After class, Jiuqi and Lin Yushi were packing up their textbooks and chatting. Yuchi, let's have lunch together. Jiuqi smiled shyly and said in a rare soft voice, another day. I made an appointment with a friend yesterday to go to my grandpa's place. Lin Yushi saw her daughter's shyness and became very curious. She kept asking, who is it? Is it your boyfriend? Jiuqi was slightly embarrassed. She didn't expect that Lin Yushi, who looked like an icy beauty, was actually passionate and gossipy. However, this was good for her. It was very helpful for her performance. She pretended not to see Xiaoren's bright eyes behind her, which were shining with the light of gossip. She blushed slightly and pushed Lin Yushi's arm. She said coquettishly, you're so annoying. What boyfriend? We're just ordinary friends. Lin Yushi nodded sincerely. If you say we're ordinary friends, then we're ordinary friends. Don't worry, I really didn't see you blushing. Lin Yushi, if you keep talking, I'm really going to get angry. Jiuqi's almond-shaped eyes widened and her face blushed even more. She looked like a drunk person with an indescribable charm. Xiaoren's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. However, he quickly came back to his senses and patted his cheeks. Bah, a black-hearted bad woman. How can she be as beautiful and cute as my Zisu? Thinking of his goddess, Xiaoren's heart surged. Right, that old witch Jiuqi had an adulterer. It was such an important matter that he had to tell his goddess. Thinking of his goddess' gentle smile at him, his whole body softened. Okay, I got it. Thank you, Xiaoran. I'm very worried that my sister will be deceived by a bad man. If you hear any news in the future, please tell me. Xiaoran, you're really a good person. In the car, Yizisu softly talked to Xiaoran on the phone. The smile on her delicate face disappeared, and it was terrifyingly gloomy. Yizisu sat in the car and waited for more than 10 minutes. From afar, she saw Jiuqi and a man walking towards the parking lot. As they got closer, she saw that the man was Gu Fifan. Gu Fifan changed girlfriends every 2 to 3 days. They were talking and laughing, and their movements were very intimate. Gu Fifan even held Jiuqi's shoulder and stared at her affectionately. The two of them got in the car and drove away. Yizisu sneered. No wonder Jiuqi had been running to the old house these days. It turned out that she was hiding a mistress in the old house and living with Gu Fifan in the old house. Jiuqi, you pair of wild lovebirds will soon fly off on your own in the face of disaster. Mom, Jiuqi is dating a man in the old house. Hurry up and take Uncle Ji to catch the adulterers. Hey Yishui, call a few classmates, the more the better. I'll invite you to the courtyard house in the old town to play. In the afternoon we'll go to the karaoke together. Yizisu thought for a moment and called a few of Gu Fifan's powerful ex-girlfriends. Coincidentally, those girls had a conflict with Jiuqi. Catching adulterers together would be more lively. Last time, she was the one who made a fool of herself in public. This time it's Jiuqi's turn. The more she thought about it, the more excited she became. Her blood began to boil. When Qin Tingfang received the phone call, she was putting on a facial mask. When she heard the news, she was so excited that she threw the mask away and quickly changed her clothes. When she went out, she ran into Nurse Gong. Nurse Gong said mysteriously, "Madam, I asked Dao to follow Ruru this morning. Dao came back and said that Ruru went to the old house. There were men's clothes and underwear drying in the backyard of the old house. I suspect that Miss is living with a man." Good Nurse Gong, you did a good job. Qin Tingfang was all smiles. She swayed her hips and walked towards the study. It just so happened that Ji Bowen was at home today. Let him, as a father, catch his daughter in the act. Let's see how he would put his face. Of course, the paparazzi were also needed. She wanted the whole city to see Jiuqi's lascivious nature. This was a very old courtyard, which should have been left behind from the Republic of China. The spacious courtyard was planted with flowers and trees. In the middle of the courtyard, there was a small artificial lake with grotesquely shaped rockeries standing in the lake. The entire courtyard house retained its ancient style and had its own unique charm. This was something that couldn't be bought even if one had the money to do so. Gu Fifan followed Jiuqi into the courtyard, laughing and teasing her about the rich heritage of the Ji family. Jiuqi smiled and did not argue. In fact, the rich heritage of the Su family was her grandfather, who was a famous general, while her father, Ji Bowen, was just a commoner. Stepping into the backyard, there were many workers busy trimming flowers and leaves, repairing the walls and windows and painting the walls. It was bustling with activity. Gu Fifan was depressed. Didn't you say that we were going on a date? Why are there so many people? It's too boring. Jiuqi sincerely emphasized, it's not a date. I'm treating you to a meal. There was a big difference between the two. Gu Fifan raised his eyebrows and said with a smile that was not a smile, it doesn't matter. It's rare to have the opportunity to eat the dishes personally made by Miss Ji. I'll just treat them as the background. Although the building was old, the decoration in the room was a combination of classical and modern, which was both elegant and comfortable. Gu Fifan leaned against the kitchen door and leisurely crossed his arms, watching Jiuqi busy in the kitchen. She was wearing a white turtleneck sweater, a red knee-length skirt, a pair of cute fluffy slippers and a cartoon apron. Her fluffy curly hair was tied into a bun on top of her head, which made her delicate face as bright as jade. Her pair of watery eyes flowed with light, full of smiles, beautiful and pure. She skillfully fiddled with pots and pans, like an angel who had mistakenly entered the mortal world. It was the first time he saw such a clean girl, her whole body exuding a fresh aura. At that moment he suddenly felt his heart beat faster. He was very clear that she was different from the girls he had hunted in the past. He really liked her. When did it start? Perhaps it was when he stood outside her car window and saw her successfully pranking Jiang Tianhao. She was overjoyed and started to laugh wickedly. Jiuqi inadvertently raised her head and saw Gu Fifan's strange expression. She raised her eyebrows in surprise, but did not think too much about it. She looked very calm and focused on cooking, but in fact she was worried. Qin Tingfang and Yizisu, they should be here, right? Why aren't they here yet? Outside the courtyard, a group of gorgeously dressed beauties came out of several luxury cars, led by Yizisu. She pushed open the courtyard door and invited everyone in. These girls were all from wealthy families, but most of them were from the foundation of their parents' generation. They did not have a deep foundation like the Su family. Once they walked into the courtyard, they could not help but secretly sigh. There was a low-key luxurious atmosphere everywhere, and it was not something that could be bought with money. It's just SOSO. What's there to show off? Compared to the Shin family's garden, it's a far cry. A girl named Zhu arrogantly raised her chin. She was the daughter of the municipal party secretary, and also Gu Fifan's current girlfriend. She was usually arrogant in school, and had always been the focus of everyone's attention. Now that she found that everyone's eyes were on Yi Zissou, she felt uncomfortable all over. Zhu's loyal supporters immediately echoed, "Yes, I heard that the Shin family's villa was built in an ancient garden, and is worth hundreds of millions." Ing City's Shin family was ranked first on the rich list, and they also had a complicated political relationship behind them. The two young masters of the Shin family were dragons among men, talented and good-looking people. It was a pity that they rarely appeared in the high society circle, and these girls could only dream about it. Yi Zissou was refuted by Zhu, and she was very angry. But when she thought of her important role in catching the adulterers, she suppressed her anger and smiled gently. "Our Ji family can't be compared to the Shin family. Let me show you around." "Hey look, isn't that Jiuqi and Gu Fifan?" A girl with sharp eyes saw a man and a woman standing under the osmanthus tree. Zhu took a closer look and sure enough, it was Jiuqi and Gu Fifan. The two of them were very close to each other, and Gu Fifan even put his hand on Jiuqi's hair. She was so angry that her whole body trembled, and like a grumpy heifer, she rushed towards the two of them, and forgot about her ladylike etiquette. "Jiuqi, you bitch, how dare you seduce my boyfriend?" Zhu rushed in front of the two, raised her arm and slapped Jiuqi's cheek. "Zhu, don't mess around." Gu Fifan's face was ugly, and he grabbed Zhu's wrist tightly, so that her slap didn't go down. "Let go of me. Gu Fifan, how can you do this? I am your girlfriend and you are helping that bitch." Zhu was so angry that her eyes turned red. Since childhood, she was a proud princess in the eyes of the boys. She thought that she was the one who ended Gu Fifan's single life. She didn't expect that he actually cheated on her, and with her most hated Jiuqi. Hateful, too hateful. Gu Fifan squeezed her wrist harder and his face was livid. He was really blind. How could he associate with such a vulgar, rude, big-breasted, brainless woman? It was simply the shame of his life. He shook her off and coldly said, "The 3-day shelf life has passed, let's break up. Zhu, I warn you, don't go against Yuqi. Don't think that I don't know. On the school forum, the one who scolded her the most fiercely is you." Zhu was thrown back several steps by him and almost fell down. Fortunately, she was supported by Yi Zissou. She shook off Yi Zissou's hand and angrily said, "Gu Fifan, you dare to treat me like this, I will make you and that bitch regret it." Gu Fifan indifferently raised his chin, and with a look of disdain he said, "Okay, I'll wait and see." Zhu angrily stomped her feet. She couldn't get any advantage in front of Gu Fifan, so she turned her spearhead to Jiuqi. "Jiuqi, you bitch, it's not enough that you poison your own sister, but you also want to steal your classmate's boyfriend. Do you have any sense of shame? Are you still human?" Beauty novel Xinwu 799. Chapter 802. Miss were satisfied with the show and spoke up for Zhu one after another. They scolded Jiuqi for being a despicable person and called her a mistress. Gu Fifan's eyebrows twitched, and he wanted to drive the group of women away several times. Jiuqi quietly tugged at his sleeve, indicating that he shouldn't act recklessly. He saw that her expression was calm as if she didn't care at all, and suddenly calmed down as well. He watched those usually lofty and delicate young ladies suddenly turn into vulgar cursing ants on the street. He stroked his chin and watched with great interest, constantly pointing out, "Hey, that teapot with your hands on your hips has a great style. Hey, you don't open your mouth so wide. Your bloody mouth is so scary." The women almost vomited blood. They felt insulted and tried even harder to humiliate Jiuqi. The scene was fiery and bloody. Ji Bowen and Qin Tingfang appeared at this time. There were also a few paparazzi hiding at the entrance, quickly pressing the shutters of their cameras. Yi Zissou was very good at seizing the opportunity. She quickly stood in front of Jiuqi and spoke up for her. "Everyone please calm down. There must be some misunderstanding. My sister is not that kind of person." Zhu pulled her away and scolded, "Don't speak up for Jiuqi. We all saw it. She is a slut who seduces other people's boyfriends. I really don't know how the Ji family raised her." "Shut up." Ji Bowen was very angry. Qin Tingfang, who was very close to him, saw that he was so angry that his fingers were trembling. Ji Bowen had never been so ruthlessly slapped in the face by the younger generation. His daughter was the treasure of the Su family and also the treasure of the Ji family. Since when did this group of ignorant girls have the right to insult her? This reprimand shocked Zhu and the others. Ji Bowen had dominated the business world for many years. How could these young girls withstand the majestic aura that had been formed over the years? His cold gaze swept over the people who were cursing Yuqi one by one. Whoever his gaze landed on turned pale. He didn't know Zhu, but he knew a few of the girls. Their families had business dealings with the Ji family. Their fathers had to flatter him when they saw him, but they bullied his daughters. Good, very good. He had decided to have a good talk with those companies. Zhu quickly calmed down. Others were afraid of Ji Bowen, but she was not. Wasn't he just a businessman? He dared to offend her father? Zhu raised her chin and looked at Ji Bowen arrogantly. Teacher Ji, it's not that we bullied your daughter, but your daughter went too far. She stole my love and my friends couldn't stand it anymore, so they taught her a lesson. Yeah, Uncle Ji, we didn't do it on purpose. When the others saw this, they hurriedly apologized. At the same time, they subtly diverted the fire of war onto Ji. Ji Bowen looked at Ji and Gu Fifan, who had remained silent. He asked calmly, Chi, is what they said true? Ji bit her lips and her eyes reddened. Dad, no. I didn't. Ji Bowen looked at his daughter, who was about to cry. His expression softened. Chi, don't cry. Dad believes you. Ji nodded heavily. She stubbornly wiped the corners of her eyes and faced the crowd resolutely. Zhu, you said that I stole your boyfriend. Please show me the evidence. If you don't have it, I can sue you for slander. Gu Fifan rested his chin on his hand and watched for a while. He also saw the trick. He silently criticized Ji acting skills were amazing. She was cold, weak, and stubborn. With so many sides, she was full of surprises. Zhu snorted and said disdainfully, so many pairs of eyes have seen you and Gu Fifan hugging each other, and he even stroked your hair. Such an intimate action has already gone beyond the scope of ordinary friends. Ji didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Hugging? Aren't you exaggerating? We were just standing together. As for him stroking my hair. Gu Fifan, you explain. Gu Fifan had waited for a long time and finally got the chance to appear. He combed his hair handsomely and raised his eyebrows with a smile. A leaf fell on Yuqi's head and I helped her to remove it. It's that simple. You're quibbling. Zhu stomped her feet and said angrily, if you're not having an affair, why are you secretly hiding in this courtyard? Secretly? Hiding? Ji smiled more and more helplessly. She spread her hands. I openly invited Gu Fifan to the old house for dinner. What's more, there are not only two of us here. There are many people who can testify for us and prove that we're innocent. No, I don't believe it. When we came, we clearly only saw the two of you. Zhu couldn't help but want to flip out. Yizisu and Qin Tingfang also wanted to flip out. They faintly felt that things were not good. Why did they have a feeling that they were being cheated? Ji Bowen secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although he believed in his daughter, if his daughter couldn't clear her name in front of so many people, her reputation would be worse. Now he was finally relieved. Ji led a group of people to the backyard. There were dozens of workers in the yard. Men and women were busy. Everyone was dumbfounded. Cheating under the eyes of so many people? What a joke. It seemed that Ji and Gu Fifan were really innocent. Ji Bowen suddenly thought of something and smiled. Chi, are these the workers you found to renovate the yard? Look at me, I almost forgot about it. His daughter had once mentioned to him that she wanted to renovate the old house. He thought she was just saying it casually, but he didn't expect her to be serious. He nodded approvingly. His and Meiyu's daughter had really grown up. Zhu's face turned red and white, and Yizisu clenched her fists. Qin Tingfang cursed Ji in her heart. She was sure that she had jumped into the trap set by the other party. At this moment, a young man carrying a paint bucket suddenly stopped and looked at the group of people carefully. Then he rushed to Qin Tingfang and her daughter like crazy and knelt on the ground, crying, Mrs. Ji, second miss, please do me a favor and let my sister go. We didn't spend a single cent of the money you gave my sister. We'll return it all to you. Please let my sister go. This young man was wearing dusty work clothes. His entire body was covered in dust like a little mouse. His face was also very dirty. When tears flowed down, they washed out 2 small streaks on his cheeks, making him look like a big gray cat. Qin Tingfang frowned in disdain and Yizisu screamed, You, who are you? What nonsense are you talking about here? Ji Bowen's eyelids twitched and he said, "Young man, what do you want? Stand up and tell me." The young man stood up and wiped the tears on his face with the back of his hand. His face was dark and only the color of his teeth could be seen. He choked and said, "Sir, my name is Wu Xiaohu and my sister is Wu Xiaofeng. My sister works at the Ji family and a few days ago she was suddenly arrested and taken to the police station. I went to the police station to visit my sister, and she gave me a bank card with 200,000 yuan in it. She said that this was her savings, but my sister only earns 2,000 yuan a month. How could she save so much money? I asked her and my parents forced her, so she said that this money was given to her by Mrs. G. Mrs. G, I don't want your money. I beg you, drop the lawsuit against my sister." This dirty kid was actually Xiaofeng's brother. Chen Tingfang's breathing was unstable, and she forced herself to calm down. She had negotiated with Xiaofeng that she would give Xiaofeng 200,000 yuan as compensation. She had thought that Xiaofeng's family was all farmers and didn't know much, but who knew that Wu Xiaohu would come looking for her? No, it couldn't be so coincidental. Chen Tingfang's sharp gaze quickly turned to Jiyuqi, only to see that she was shocked as if she had never known about Wu Xiaohu. Chen Tingfang was even more certain that this was Jiyuqi's doing. She swallowed a few mouthfuls of blood and looked at Wu Xiaohu coldly. "Wu Xiaohu, right? This is strange. I've never given your sister any money. Could it be that your sister is lying? Or could it be that she stole something from the Ji family and sold it for money, and now she wants to frame the Ji family?" Wu Xiaohu said firmly, "Impossible. Although our family is poor, we would never steal anything. My sister said that you were the one who gave her the money." Chen Tingfang sneered. "Since your sister said that I gave her the money, did she say why I gave her the money? Am I crazy to give money to others for no reason? Even if you want to blackmail me, you should find a better reason." Wu Xiaohu's mouth opened, but he didn't know what to say. He had asked his sister why Mrs. Ji gave her money, but she refused to say anything. Chen Tingfang saw that he was in a daze and felt that she was right. She raised her chin and said contemptuously, "You have nothing to say, right? Your sister ended up in jail because she framed Master. That's what she deserved." "No." Wu Xiaohu interrupted her emotionally. "My sister must have been wronged. She wouldn't do such a thing." His eyes became fanatical as he stared at Chen Tingfang and Yi Zisu, who was standing next to her. He said word by word, "My sister also said something to me. She said, 'Madam and second miss, please be magnanimous.'" Why did Chen Tingfang and Yi Zisu have to be magnanimous? Was Wu Xiaofeng forced to admit her crime to protect her master's face? Everyone present was smart and they all thought of this possibility. In an instant, everyone turned to look at the mother and daughter. Ji Bowen's eyebrows twitched and there was a hint of anger. Chen Tingfang was furious. That bitch, Xiaofeng, had dared to betray her. How despicable. Actually, Xiaofeng also hated Chen Tingfang. Chen Tingfang had promised her that she would protect her and not let her go to jail. She didn't expect that in front of Ji Bowen. She didn't even say a word and let Xiaofeng be arrested by the police. That was why Xiaofeng told her brother the source of the 200,000 yuan. As for the sentence, "be magnanimous," it was Jiyuqi who taught Wu Xiaohu to say. Awesome Novel Songshu 566. Chapter 803. At this critical moment, Yi Zisu suddenly calmed down. She looked at Chen Tingfang and then looked at Ji Bowen. She said softly, "Mom, Uncle Ji, I was too strict. That's why Xiaofeng hated me and did that kind of thing. In fact, I feel guilty these days. Xiaofeng is still very young. Her life shouldn't be stained. As the person involved, I don't want to pursue her legal responsibility anymore. Uncle Ji, I want to withdraw the lawsuit against Xiaofeng. Is that okay?" Ji Bowen's eyes were dark, and it was hard to tell if he was happy or angry. As his wife, Chen Tingfang knew that he was weighing the pros and cons in his heart. She quickly said, "Bowen, Zisu is right. Xiaofeng's family lives in the countryside, and her whole family depends on her to survive. It's not easy." Jiyuqi sneered in her heart. These two mother and daughter were really good. They covered up Wu Xiaohu's words with just a few words and pushed the decision to her father. It made her father look like a cold-blooded and heartless person. Of course, she wouldn't let them do as they wished. Jiyuqi said lightly, "Auntie Zisu, if you said those words on the day of the incident, Xiaofeng wouldn't have been sent to the police station. She wouldn't have caused a commotion in the city and let everyone see our Ji family as a joke. Father is doing this for Zisu's own good. Otherwise, what if the servants hate her and do something to hurt her?" Gu Fifan interrupted. "Second miss, you should be more lenient to your servants in the future. After all, they are also human. You can't just beat and scold them." Someone laughed in a low voice. No matter how you listened, it sounded like mockery. Yizisu's face turned pale. She knew that from today onwards, she would bear the reputation of being harsh to her servants. Okay, this matter is decided. Ting Feng, contact the police station and withdraw the lawsuit against Xiao Feng. Ji Bowen didn't want to make this matter bigger. Now that the Ji family's reputation had been affected, it was better to keep the peace. Moreover, this way the media would no longer keep a close eye on Yuqi. Ji Yuqi had already guessed that Xiaofeng and Qin Tingfeng had made a deal, so she asked a private investigator to keep an eye on Xiaofeng's family. When Wu Xiaofeng gave Wu Xiaohu 200,000 yuan, she asked Ruru to find Wu Xiaohu and tell him that if he wanted his sister to be released from prison, he should do as she said. Although the incident this time could not bring down Qin Tingfeng, it would make the thorn in Ji Bowen's heart even deeper. Moreover, Ji Yuqi would also take the opportunity to get rid of Qin Tingfeng's moles, such as anti-gong. Sometimes the truth was not important. What was important was the facts that one saw. The truth was that Qin Tingfeng had once given Xiaofeng 200,000 yuan. It was not difficult for anyone to guess the purpose of this sum of money. Qin Tingfeng paid the paparazzi to shut up, but she couldn't bribe the students who were present. Therefore, there was a rumor that Qin Tingfeng used the money to bribe Xiaofeng and let Xiaofeng frame Ji Yuqi. Qin Tingfeng was afraid that Ji Bowen would continue to investigate, so she didn't dare to play tricks anymore. She played the role of a good wife and mother every day and took good care of Ji Yuqi and Xuanhuan. Although Ji Bowen was suspicious, he didn't pursue the matter. He just fired Andy Gong and ignored Qin Tingfeng for a few days. Yizisu also had a hard time these days. Those who used to follow her mocked and ridiculed her, and those who didn't like her bullied her even more. However, she always remembered Qin Tingfeng's teachings. She had to endure. Ji Yuqi that B***th wouldn't be arrogant for long. During class, Yizisu went to the washroom and heard them talking about her. She gritted her teeth and suppressed the anger in her heart. She tried to appear calm and elegant. She pretends to be a noble and elegant white lotus, but in fact she's just a disgusting dog's tail. That's right. Last time, so many of us were invited to the courtyard house to watch Ji Yuqi make a fool of herself. In the end, she made a fool of herself. After Yizisu entered the cubicle, she heard the disdainful laughter through the door. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Her beautiful cheeks were distorted with anger. Suddenly, a bucket of cold water was poured on her head. Her body was soaked and her hair and clothes stuck to her body. She was so cold that she shivered. Open the door, open the door. She couldn't hold it in anymore. Her anger exploded in an instant, and she pounded on the cubicle door like a madwoman. Damn it, that group of B***cheese actually locked her inside. The only response she got was the sound of gradually fading footsteps and ridiculing laughter. Ji Yuqi stood outside the cubicle door with her arms crossed. She smiled leisurely and thought to herself, I'll pay you back little by little. Yizisu looked forward to it. The bell rang and everyone in the cubicle disappeared. Only Yizisu was left. She hugged her arms and curled up in the corner of the cubicle with an ashen face. She was in such a sorry state that she looked like an abandoned puppy. In this moment of embarrassment and helplessness, the first person that Yizisu thought of asking for help was Jiang Tianhao. Fortunately, she had her phone with her. She took out the wet, waterproof phone from her coat pocket and used her stiff fingers to send him a text message. Senior, save me. When Jiang Tianhao rushed into the female cubicle, Yizisu was like a pitiful little animal curled up in the corner of the cubicle. She closed her eyes and shivered. He hurriedly took off his coat and draped it over her body. He hugged her cold body tightly and said in an extremely gentle voice, Zisu, it's okay now. I'm here. Yizisu's long eyelashes fluttered. She slowly raised her head, and 2 lines of tears flowed down her petite face. She was like a lotus after the rain, and also like a begonia welcoming the morning dew. She was so delicate that it made people feel pity for her. Senior, I'm so scared. Her lips trembled. She was already sobbing when she said those 2 words. His embrace was warm and solid. He gently stroked her back and comforted her softly. It's okay now. I'm here. Don't be afraid. Yizisu was crying in his arms. Her face was covered in tears, but her moist eyes were shining with a strange light. Yizisu was not easy to defeat. Even if she was at a disadvantage, she would turn it into an advantage. Senior would definitely feel pity for her when he saw her delicate appearance, wouldn't he? However, Jiang Tianhao was thinking that if he appeared when Yizisu was at her most helpless and saved her, he would definitely capture her heart. Although this pair of man and woman had different goals, they were getting closer because of the same calculation. These days were the most comfortable days for Jiuchi after her rebirth. In school no one mocked and ridiculed her anymore. On the contrary, everyone looked at her with sympathy. It was as if she was the Cinderella in the fairy tale, always being bullied by her stepmother and stepsister. Jiuchi's former friends who had fallen out with her came back to get close to her. She treated them politely and was no longer as warm as before. This was because she understood that only those who stood by her side when she was in trouble were true friends. Yuchi. A familiar voice came from behind her. Jiuchi turned around and saw Tang Feng's tall and slender figure standing in front of her. There was an unnatural expression on his handsome face. He took a step forward and said in a low voice, "Yuchi, I heard from Zissou that Xiaofeng deliberately framed you. I wronged you. Please forgive me." Jiuchi found it funny. She didn't expect the arrogant Tang Feng to apologize to her. If he had put down his pride and was willing to believe her just this once in her previous life, she wouldn't have been so desperate that she wanted to commit suicide. She looked into his eyes with a complicated expression and said softly, "Tang Feng Gij, you've changed. When we were young, no matter what others said, you would always believe me." When she was young, she often went to Tang Feng's house to play. Tang Feng's cousin didn't like her and often said bad things about her. Every time Tang Feng would say seriously, "I believe in Chi-Chi." She wouldn't do such a thing. "Tang Feng, why? Why don't you believe in me when I'm at my lowest point?" She thought about all the things in her previous life and how he resolutely broke off the engagement. She stood on the rooftop in despair and looked at his back as he walked away. She hoped so much that he would turn around and look at her, but he didn't. He held Yi Zissou's hand and left without hesitation. His back was so heartless. Her heart ached and her eyes turned slightly red. She looked at him with her beautiful almond-shaped eyes, which made him feel suffocated. The feeling of loss became even stronger. But soon he felt that her complaints were unreasonable. He calmed down and said in a low voice, "Yuchi, you've changed too. You're no longer who you were when you were young. How can you force me to be who I was when I was young?" Yes, everyone had changed. They couldn't go back to how they were in the past. Why should she force it? Jiuchi restrained the slight sadness in her heart. Her eyes became cold and her tone was indifferent. "Big brother Tang Feng, let's break off the engagement," she said. Tang Feng's eyes narrowed. Although he had told Yuchi more than once that he would not marry her, she actually spoke before he could break off the engagement. This made him feel like he had been abandoned. His self-esteem was hurt. He was so outstanding, but she actually wanted to break off the engagement. Could it be that she had a change of heart? He held her shoulders and stared at her dangerously. "What? Could it be that you've fallen for someone else?" Jiuchi smiled bitterly. "Big brother Tang Feng, the one who has fallen for someone else is not me but you. I just don't want to make things difficult for you. Didn't you say that you won't marry me? Then there's no need for us to maintain this engagement." Tang Feng's heart was in a mess. He didn't like her before because he felt that she had become unruly and ruthless. But now he suddenly wondered if she had really turned bad. Or had he misjudged her from the beginning? He was not willing to let go just like that. His self-esteem would not allow him to be dumped by a girl. He did not explain anything. He only said firmly, "Yuchi, I will not agree to break off the engagement." Jiuchi's lips curled into a faint sneer. "Because I was the one who brought it up first, I embarrassed you, didn't I? All right, then I'll wait for you to bring it up." She did not want to say anything more and turned to leave. He suddenly grabbed her arm and forced her to turn back. There was a hint of confusion in his deep eyes. "Yuchi, what kind of person are you?" Jiuchi could not help but feel sad. This was the person who had been her childhood sweetheart for 20 years. Did he not know her well enough? Yet he asked such a question. She brushed his hand away expressionlessly and said calmly, "Tang Feng, you really disappoint me." Tang Feng stared blankly at her as she walked away. A corner of his heart twitched as if he had lost something and could never get it back. Jiuchi turned around the corner and saw Gu Fifan leaning against the wall leisurely with his arms crossed. He raised his eyebrows and smiled. That kid surnamed Tang really has poor taste. He mistook fish eyes for pearls. Ad Xinwu 799. Chapter 804. Jiuchi glanced at him with displeasure in her eyes. "Eavesdropping on our conversation?" Gu Fifan shrugged handsomely and said lazily, "Not exactly eavesdropping. I wanted to look for you but he beat me to it, so I waited here." He made a disdainful expression. "Who asked you to be so loud that I could hear you?" Jiuchi couldn't be bothered to argue with him. She raised her brows and asked, "Why are you looking for me?" He leaned closer to her and whispered into her ear, "How are you going to repay me for being used by you last time?" Jiuchi pursed her lips. This Gu Fifan was pretty smart. If it wasn't to lure Yi Zissou into the trap, she wouldn't have invited him to the Gu residence. She smiled faintly. How do you want me to repay you? His slender fingers hooked a strand of her hair and sniffed it. His actions were elegant and flirtatious. His magnetic voice carried a hint of a smile. Be my girlfriend. Jiuqi slapped his hand away and pulled back her hair. She said faintly, Mr. Gu, I'm not interested in being the clothes that you changed out of in 3 days. Gu Fifan chuckled. Jiuqi had to admit that his deep laughter was very attractive. Chi-Chi, are you jealous? Jiuqi rolled her eyes. Big brother, I'm obviously rejecting you. I'm rejecting you, okay? Which eye of yours saw me being jealous? How could she be jealous over a stud horse? Gu Fifan liked to see her angry face. It was much cuter than her cold face. He stroked her fluffy curls as if he was comforting a small animal. He smiled and said, Don't be angry. I'm just joking with you. Seriously, be my girlfriend. I'm so handsome and talented. I won't embarrass you. Jiuqi suddenly grabbed his wrist, which was resting on her shoulder. She grinned and said, If you can dodge this move, I'll agree. What? Gu Fifan was surprised. Before he could speak, he suddenly felt that his body was lifted into the air. Then, with a plop sound, he was thrown over her shoulder onto the concrete floor. Jiuqi. Gu Fifan was awkwardly lying on the ground, fiercely staring at the innocent face of the woman. His heart was about to vomit to death. He was such a smart person, but he was actually tricked by a woman. Jiuqi shrugged innocently. I'm sorry, Mr. Gu. You didn't meet my requirements. Gu Fifan was both angry and amused. If it was said that he was joking when he asked her to be his girlfriend, now he really wanted to make her his girlfriend. This woman was like a poppy, mysterious and beautiful. The closer he got to her, the more he found that she was hiding many secrets. He was determined to get her. After class, Jiuqi drove the car to the villa halfway up the mountain. This villa area was hidden in the mountains. It was very quiet, suitable for leisure and retirement. One of the 2-story villas was located by the lake. The owner was an old man in his 60s, Zhao Yao. Zhao Yao was born in the Special Forces. He used to be the bodyguard of Jiuqi's grandfather, Su Zhenghang. After Su Zhenghang passed away, he moved to this villa and lived a semi-secluded life. By the lake, a hale and hearty old man with white hair was fishing quietly. He leaned on the deck chair, his eyes slightly closed. The footsteps behind him were getting closer and closer, but he did not react at all. It was as if he was asleep. Grandpa Zhao. Jiuqi quickly pounced on him. Her action seemed simple, but in fact she was aiming for a few fatal acupuncture points on his body. The old man still did not react. He sat motionless like a statue. When Jiuqi's fingers were less than a centimeter away from his body, a pair of withered old tree bark-like hands suddenly grabbed her wrist. With a violent tug, her delicate body was flung into the air like a kite and fell heavily into the lake. The cold water rushed towards her ears and nose from all directions. After panicking for a second, she quickly calmed down. Using a vigorous posture, she swam towards the shore unhurriedly and loudly teased, Grandpa Zhao, you're too ruthless. If I didn't react quickly just now, I might have drowned. Zhao Yao stood up slowly and said with a straight face, Where have you been these few days? Why didn't you come for training? Jiuqi stuck out her tongue and quickly climbed out of the water. She smiled and said, I was at home dealing with those 2 annoying women. But luckily I won. They should stop for a few days. Zhao Yao's face was expressionless as he replied, You've missed 5 days. Make up for all the training that you've missed. If you can't complete it, there's no need for dinner. Yes. Jiuqi's expression was solemn as she saluted him. Ever since she had been reborn, Jiuqi had realized the importance of strength. She could no longer be a weak and ignorant young lady. She had to use her strength to strengthen herself and protect herself and her family. In her previous life, she lived in the beautiful dream that Jiang Tianhao created for her. She was muddle-headed and became his slave without any thoughts of her own. In this life, she wanted to change the tragic fate of her previous life. She wanted to build her own business. She wanted to become a strong woman and protect the Ji family's assets. She wanted to make those who looked down on her look at her differently and create a wonderful life. For this goal, she was not afraid of any hardship. She gritted her teeth and ran 2 rounds around the mountain. Then she jumped into the cold lake and swam back and forth for half an hour. After that, she went to the training room to practice martial arts with Grandpa Zhao. She had been living like this for more than half a month. Initially, she was so tired that she had to lie on the ground and listen to Grandpa Zhao's lecture. Now she could barely take 10 moves from him. Soon the school would be on winter break. Jiuqi no longer had to play the hypocritical game with Jiang Tianhao. She had a very comfortable time. She dragged Xuanhuan to Zhao Yao's place to practice martial arts every day. During the Chinese New Year, Xuanhuan's body became stronger and he grew a few centimeters taller. He looked healthy and handsome. He was not as rebellious and naughty as before. He was obedient and sensible, and his personality was more stable. Ji Bowen was very pleased and praised him in front of the whole family. Jiuqi had also become healthier. Her fair skin was tinged with a faint pink, like a lustrous pearl, glowing with vitality. The siblings had changed a lot. Chen Tingfang felt uneasy and suspected that they were plotting something outside. She hired a private investigator to follow them and found that they went to the mountain villa every day. Unfortunately, the mountain villa was heavily guarded. Even the private investigator did not know what they were doing inside. Chen Tingfang implicitly mentioned to Ji Bowen a few times that her children had grown up and were always running outside. She was worried about their safety. Ji Bowen did not take it to heart. In the end, he was annoyed and said, "Chichi told me that she and Ahan went to Uncle Zhao's house. Uncle Zhao is Chichi's grandfather's security officer. The old man has no children and lives alone. It is only right for the children to accompany him. You don't have to worry about it." Chen Tingfang felt very uncomfortable. She was the child's stepmother. It was right for her to care about the child, but he said that she was worrying for nothing. Jiuqi and her brother were becoming more and more favored. This meant that her and Zisu's position in the family was in danger. She could not sit still and wait for death. She had to plan well. On New Year's Eve, Jiuqi had just woken up when she received a call from Jiang Tianhao. His voice was warm and gentle. "Little lazy cat, are you awake? Happy New Year." During the holidays, Jiang Tianhao would call her every day and say things that would make her fantasize. If it had been Jiuqi, who was still young and inexperienced, he would have stolen her heart long ago. However, the current Jiuqi was almost shocked to death by him calling her little lazy cat. She shivered and said softly, "Senior, Happy New Year." Jiang Tianhao said a few more words, but Jiuqi responded half-heartedly. Then she found an excuse to hang up the phone and threw it on the bed in disgust. After breakfast, she dragged Xuanhuan with her and bought many gifts to Zhao Yao's house. The housekeeper was on holiday and the villa was deserted. Yuqi invited him to her house for the new year, but he refused. Yuqi could not persuade him. She had to personally make 2 kinds of dumplings and put them in the fridge. She told him to cook them for dinner. Xuanhuan happily pasted Spring Festival couplets on the door and read Fu characters on the window. Then he swept the snow into a pile and built a snowman. Zhao Yao stood in front of the window and watched the siblings busy themselves. He felt an indescribable warmth in his heart. This house had never been so lively. The Ji family had a lively New Year's Eve. At midnight the New Year's bell rang. The sky was filled with bright fireworks, blooming in the night sky in clusters of flourishing prosperity. Jiuqi leaned against the railing and looked at the thousands of lights in the distance. She fiddled with her phone and wondered if she should contact xianxia. They had not contacted each other for a while. However, she had been following news about him. She knew that he had returned to the Shin Corporation and was the vice president. The current president was the second young master of the Shin family, Xinyu. From their positions, it could be seen that the chairman, Xin Jianhao, favored the second son, Xinyu. The vice president position seemed glamorous, but in reality, it had no real power and was controlled by Xinyu. Moreover, when Xianxia was overseas, Xinyu had already taken control of the Shin Corporation. It could be said that the entire Shin Corporation was under Xinyu's control. Xianxia was such a proud person, it must be difficult for him to face Xinyu's attitude every day. Jiuqi sighed. They were both his sons, but why was Xin Jianhao so biased? Beep. Her phone rang. Jiuqi quickly opened the message and was disappointed for a moment. However, she was happy again. It was a message from Lin Yushi. She replied and wished her a happy new year. The phone rang again. It was a familiar music. Jiuqi glanced at the caller ID, and her heartbeat inexplicably sped up. She couldn't help but curve her lips and swipe open the phone. "What are you doing?" Xianxia's voice was low and magnetic. It was like red wine that had been in the cellar for many years. It was fragrant and intoxicating. Her mood brightened without any warning. The smile on her lips deepened, and there was a coquettish tone in her voice that she didn't even notice. "I'm answering your call." Xianxia laughed softly. He stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at the bright fireworks in the sky. He could not help but think of the first time he saw her. In the small forest, her eyes were frighteningly bright and beautiful, just like the fireworks. Hangcha 866. Chapter 805. Yuchi, this was the first time he had called her by her name. His magnetic voice made her heart melt. For the first time she felt that her name sounded so good when someone called her by her name. She pursed her lips and smiled. Yes. Yuchi, he called her again. She thought that he had something important to say. She held her breath and asked in a gentle voice, "What's the matter? Do you know how to make crystal prawn dumplings?" Jiuchi was speechless. Yuchi? Jiuchi was angry. Couldn't he say something romantic in such a good atmosphere? Why did he only know how to eat? This glutton. She was shocked. Wait a minute, why was she expecting him to say something romantic? Could it be that she... No, it wasn't like that. She just felt guilty and wanted to make it up to him. If she loved him, she would have loved him in her previous life. Why would she wait until this life? Moreover, she wanted revenge. Her life was already dark. He wouldn't like her being so cruel and merciless. Jiuchi's heart felt stifled for no reason, and all her joy vanished like smoke into thin air. Yuchi, are you listening? She replied softly. She pulled herself together and said, Didn't you have a reunion dinner? You're hungry again? There's no reunion dinner. I'm at Golden Bay. His voice was calm, but Jiuchi could hear the loneliness in it. She couldn't help but feel sorry for him. She knew that place. It was Shinja's villa. Jianhu had thrown him there when he was 16 years old. She thought that no matter how much Jianhu disliked Shinja, he would ask him to return to the Shin family for the new year. She didn't expect him to be so heartless. She gripped her cell phone tightly and said impulsively, "Wait for me. I'll go to your place." She paused. She remembered that she wasn't that familiar with him yet. But since she had already said it, she could only laugh dryly. "I'm just kidding. Go to the balcony and look downstairs. See if there's a black car." Shinja didn't seem to hear her last sentence and continued to instruct her. Jiuchi, who was standing outside the balcony, obediently looked down. There was indeed a black car parked outside the courtyard. She blinked curiously. "Yes, how did you know?" He chuckled. "I was the one who asked Aze to pick you up. Weren't you coming to my house?" Jiuchi was speechless. After holding it in for a while, she said in a muffled voice, "So you've already planned this? If I didn't take the initiative to mention it to you, what were you going to do?" "Ask Aze to come back," he said nonchalantly. Jiuchi was inexplicably angry. "Are you stupid? Don't you know how to invite him? Aren't you embarrassed to let a girl take the initiative?" He thought about it seriously. "So it can be done like this. I'll remember it. Just you wait." Jiuchi clenched his teeth and hung up the phone. Without another word, she decided to make a big plate of dumplings and stuff him to death. Jiuchi knew Aze. He was Shinja's bodyguard and also his friend. He liked to wear trench coats, black and white. Both colors of trench coats had a special charm on him. With his tall figure and dashing trench coat, he looked like a killer who had walked out of the Matrix. Aze was a man of few words. When he saw Jiuchi walking towards the car, he didn't say anything. He opened the car door and made an inviting gesture. It was the new year, so the streets were deserted. Their journey was smooth and unimpeded. In less than an hour, the car arrived at their destination. It was a villa near the bay. The chilly sea breeze carried a fishy smell. Jiuchi walked step by step into this familiar place under Aze's lead. The room was warm. Jiuchi felt as if she had returned to her own home. She took off her coat casually and hung it on the hanger. The man who had summoned her in the middle of the night was wearing gray trousers and a white shirt. The top two buttons were unbuttoned, revealing a small patch of fair skin. He was holding a wine glass in his hand and sitting lazily by the bar. He looked at her from afar. "Come over and have a drink with me." Jiuchi glanced at his muscular chest and looked a little gloomy. "You haven't recovered from your injury. You can't drink." Shinja narrowed his dark eyes in satisfaction. "You care about me." Jiuchi snorted. "Nonsense. I picked you up out of kindness. It wasn't easy to save your life. Of course I care about you." She snatched the wine glass from his hand and finished it in one gulp. "Okay, there's no more. You're not allowed to drink anymore." "Okay." Shinja answered Gigai. He leaned against the bar and supported his face with one hand. His deep almond-shaped eyes were half closed like a lazy cat. Jiuchi had the urge to rub his hair. She shook her head to get rid of that thought. Knowing that he was a little drunk, she took a blanket from the sofa and covered him with it. Then she went to the kitchen to prepare some food for him. When she opened the fridge door, she was shocked. It was full of everything. Jiuchi rummaged through the fridge and found the ingredients for the crystal shrimp dumplings. She wore an apron and busied herself by the kitchen counter for more than half an hour. The first pot of shrimp dumplings was finally ready. Xianxia? Jiuqi placed the dumplings on the bar counter and nudged a certain someone who had his eyes closed. He slowly opened his eyes. There was a hint of confusion in his deep eyes. He looked like a little puppy that had lost its way in the dark night. It made one's heart ache inexplicably. Jiuqi's throat was a little dry. She wanted to say something but she held it in. She curved her lips stiffly and pushed the plate in front of him. "Aren't you hungry? Hurry up and eat it while it's hot." His eyes had returned to their deep and cold state. He stared intently at her neck and said lightly, "Why aren't you wearing it?" Jiuqi was stunned. She suddenly realized that he was talking about the aquamarine necklace. She couldn't help but chuckle. "It's such an expensive item. Of course I have to treasure it well." He raised his eyebrows in satisfaction and slowly but elegantly enjoyed the food on the plate. He was very picky. He might not even like the food made by international chefs. However, the home-cooked dishes that she had made on the morning he woke up had whetted his appetite. Food had feelings. He could feel the love that she had poured into the food from her cooking. He liked to touch her heart in this way. She was like a pineapple. The outside was covered with thorns but the inside was soft and sweet. The crystal shrimp dumplings slowly disappeared one by one until only an empty plate was left. He looked up at her. "Is there more?" Jiuqi couldn't help but laugh. "Don't tell me you haven't eaten all day?" Fortunately, she had prepared enough dumplings for him. She picked up the plate and went to the kitchen to get the dumplings. His calm voice came from behind. "If you're willing to be my personal chef, I'll help you take revenge." Jiuqi's hand trembled and she almost threw the plate away. She laughed softly. "What revenge? I don't know what you're talking about." The light footsteps came closer and closer. Xianxia walked behind her. The distance between them was less than a meter. His voice was very calm as if he was talking about the weather. He said, "You don't have to hide it from me. I know what you're doing. I also know what they did to you." Of course he was referring to Qin Tingfang and her daughter. Jiuqi gripped the plate tightly. She was too silly. How could she forget that Xianxia wasn't the kind of person who could be easily fooled? He wouldn't allow an unknown creature to exist around her, so he would definitely investigate her identity and even her ancestors. She closed her eyes, feeling a little tired. "The day before you left, I saw someone go to your room. Was Aze. He told you everything about me, right?" Xianxia took a step forward and his chest happened to touch her back. Her back was very tense, like a fully drawn bow, which made him very uncomfortable. He frowned and explained unnaturally, "Yes, I've checked on you, but it's not what you think. You don't have to say any more." "I understand." She quickly interrupted him. She turned around and her head almost hit his chin. She stuffed the plate into his hands. "The dumplings are in the pot. You can scoop them out yourself. I'm going home." Jiuqi almost ran away. After running out of the villa, she realized that she had forgotten to take her coat. The cold air invaded her lungs and it hurt when she breathed it in. She hugged her shoulders and stood there in a daze, not knowing what to do. Go into the house to take her coat? That seemed awkward. Also, it was so late. How was she going to go home? Let Aze send her? But Aze, that guy, disappeared after bringing her into the villa. In just 2 seconds, several thoughts flashed through her mind. When she finally decided to embarrass herself and go into the house to take her coat, a warm coat was draped over her shoulders. A pair of strong arms pulled her into a broad and warm embrace. Jiuqi raised her head to look at him. His chiseled chin and thin lips were tightly pressed together. Looking up, she saw a pair of unfathomable black eyes. She couldn't see any emotion from them. "I'll take you home." Xianxia's voice was a little low. She calmed down quickly and withdrew from his embrace. She smiled politely. "Okay, sorry to trouble you." Xianxia looked at her deeply. Ignoring her avoidance, he took her hand and led her to the car. From Golden Bay to the Ji family, Xianxia didn't say anything. Jiuqi didn't want to say anything either. She turned to look out of the window. In the flickering night view, she suddenly thought of Xianxia in the past. He stroked her hair and called her little girl affectionately. She had wondered more than once why Xianxia loved her. Later she had an answer. She felt that it was because of her innocence and kindness that made Xianxia feel warm in the darkness. Therefore he was only greedy for a kind of beauty. And in this life she also lived in darkness and calculation. She couldn't bring him beauty. She was afraid that he would unveil her disguise and find out her ugliness. That made her feel ashamed, as if she had been stripped naked and placed under the sun. After that night, their relationship returned to a state where they didn't contact each other. Sometimes, Jiuqi thought about it and thought that she was having an unrealistic dream. Every time she wanted to contact xianxia, she would feel afraid and give up. At Songshu 566. Chapter 806. During the Chinese New Year, Yizisu went out every day. Jiuqi asked Ruru to follow her twice and found out that she was on a date with Jiang Tianhao. Her interest was piqued. In her previous life, Jiang Tianhao married her, but he loved Yizisu. In this life she will fulfill their wish and make them a couple. Then she will destroy what they want. Will be very exciting. In the cinema, the movie ended and the ending song was playing. The sad and sorrowful tune fit the theme of the movie. The movie was called Du Sherngyang, and the plot was very cliché. Du Sherngyang, a prostitute, fell in love with Li Jia, a rich young master. Later, Li Jia betrayed her for money and sold her to Sun Fu. Du Sherngyang was disheartened and scolded Sun Fu and Li Jia. She threw the treasure chest she had kept for many years into the river. Yizisu's eyes were misty as she looked at the man beside her shyly and timidly. She said coquettishly, "Senior, if you were Li Jia, would you abandon Du Sherngyang for your future?" Jiang Tianhao's fair and slender fingers fell on her cheeks, gently wiping away the tears at the corner of her eyes. He smiled warmly and said, "Of course not. As a man, how can I abandon my wife who went through hardships with me?" "Senior." Yizisu's cheeks were flushed red, and her eyes were so gentle that water could drip from them. She was extremely shy, and Jiang Tianhao's heart was stirred by her. He felt his body heating up. "Yushi, I think Du Sherngyang is really stupid. If I were her, I would definitely not die. I would live well and let Li Jia, that bastard, regret it." The slightly cold voice was like a basin of cold water that extinguished the heat in Jiang Tianhao's body. He quickly withdrew his fingers and looked at the beautiful figure in the front row. Jiuqi and Lin Yushi sat together and discussed the plot as if there was no one else around. Jiuqi had just finished speaking when Lin Yushi immediately replied, "Not only is she stupid, she is completely stupid. She threw away the treasure chest and died, but that scumbag called Li Jia is still alive and well. Du Sherngyang is the biggest idiot in the world." Yizisu also heard their comments and couldn't help but refute. "You can't criticize Du Sherngyang like that. Although she was betrayed by her lover, she is still a noble. In order to protect her love, she would rather sacrifice her life." Jiuqi and Lin Yushi turned their heads at the same time. Jiuqi stared at Yizisu with a smile and said slowly, "Love? Ridiculous love. The reason why Du Sherngyang chose to die was only a small part of love. More importantly, it was the cruel reality of society. It wasn't easy for her to marry the man she loved as a brothel girl. In the end, that man betrayed her shamelessly for his future and sold her to someone else. If she had chosen to live, then she would have become Sun Fu's plaything. She would have faced the ridicule of the world, so she didn't have the courage to live." Jiuqi paused, satisfied to see Yizisu's astonished expression. Her lips curled up in a mocking smile, and she continued in a voice so cold it was frightening, "I feel sorry for Du Sherngyang, because those who have never died will never know the horror of death. Compared to death, what is humiliation? What is ridicule? Nothing is more important than living." At this moment, Yizisu felt that Jiuqi was very unfamiliar. She was like a malicious spirit that walked out of hell. She had an innate coldness that made her uncontrollably fearful. On the other hand, Jiang Tianhao looked at Jiuqi and was impressed by her deep thinking. Compared to her, Yizisu was too superficial. However, the more superficial a girl was, the easier it was to control her. The current Yizisu was already obedient to him. Thinking of this, he secretly squeezed Yizisu's hand to comfort her. He smiled warmly and said, "Yuchi, what you said makes sense. Everyone only has one life, so we have to cherish it." Yizisu felt warm in her heart when he held her hand. She smiled generously and said, "Sister Chichi Yushi, I didn't expect to meet you here. What a coincidence." Jiuqi's deep gaze lingered on them. "Yes, what a coincidence. I didn't expect Senior and Zisu to watch a movie together." Her tone sounded sour. Jiang Tianhao was delighted. Was she jealous? He secretly squeezed Yizisu's hand again, then let go. He smiled and explained, "Yuchi, don't misunderstand. My friend bought a movie ticket, but something came up at the last minute and he couldn't come. I didn't expect him to make an appointment with Zisu." Yizisu received Jiang Tianhao's hint and quickly cooperated. "Yes, Sister Chichi, please don't misunderstand. I originally made an appointment with Xianxia to watch a movie together. I didn't expect him to stand me up." Xianxia was a famous trap in school. He claimed to be a good friend of women. No matter what difficulties his sisters faced, he was happy to help them solve. With such a responsible friend of women, even if Jiuqi asked him for confirmation, Yizisu didn't have to worry about him exposing her. Jiuchi blushed and said reproachfully, "What's there to misunderstand? Anyway, it's none of my business who senior likes to watch a movie with." Under the light, her flushed cheeks were as smooth as jade. Her watery eyes seemed to want to say something, but they didn't. Her coquettish gaze was like a cat's paw, scratching Jiang Tianhao's heart a few times. It was very ticklish. He knew that she was interested in him, but because Yi Zissou was present, he couldn't go too far. He said reservedly, "Yuchi, don't you understand my feelings? If you want to watch a movie, I can watch as many movies with you as you want." She really didn't know how he could say so many mushy lines. Jiuchi was so disgusted that she wanted to vomit. However, when she saw Yi Zissou's pale face, she immediately felt better. Jiuchi thought with satisfaction that after her catalysis this time, the relationship between the two of them should have improved by leaps and bounds. The four of them had dinner at a Japanese restaurant. Jiuchi once again saw how smooth and slick Jiang Tianhao was. As a man, he socialized with 3 women. He was meticulous and considerate to all of them. If she didn't already know his true colors, she would have been deceived by his gentle face. After dinner, it was getting late. The Lin family's car hadn't arrived yet. Jiuchi looked at Jiang Tianhao reluctantly. "Senior, I'll take Yushi home. You can take Zissou home." Today, in order to create a coincidental encounter with Jiang Tianhao, she called Lin Yushi out of the house. She was responsible for taking her home safely. Jiang Tianhao smiled and nodded gently. "Okay. Be careful on the road. I'll call you tonight." Jiuchi smiled shyly and pulled Lin Yushi into her car. Yi Zissou didn't drive out on the date with Jiang Tianhao to take care of his face. Jiang Tianhao stopped a taxi and said considerately, "Zissou, I'll take you home." "Senior, where are we?" Jiang Tianhao didn't take Yi Zissou home. Instead, he took her to a residential building. Standing downstairs, Yi Zissou was a little expectant, but she couldn't believe it. Jiang Tianhao held her hand and smiled gently. "This is my house, Zissou. My house is very simple. Do you dislike it?" "Of course not. I'm very happy, really." Yi Zissou shyly leaned into his arms. If he was willing to take her home, it meant that he acknowledged her as his girlfriend. The house was simple and clean. It was obvious that it was a single man's house. Yi Zissou believed that he had never brought another woman to his house. Jiang Tianhao poured her a glass of juice and sat beside her. He gazed into her eyes affectionately and said softly, "Zissou, I brought you to my house to let you understand my feelings. I like you. Are you willing to be my girlfriend?" Yi Zissou's cheeks blushed. She shyly avoided his burning gaze and said softly, Of course I'm willing." Jiang Tianhao suddenly hugged her. "Thank you, Zissou. Thank you for trusting me. Don't worry. I won't let you live a hard life. I'll make you the most beautiful and happiest bride in the world." Yi Zissou's cheeks turned even redder. She hit his chest and said coquettishly, "What bride? I'm just your girlfriend." Jiang Tianhao held her face. His gaze was passionate and sincere. It was as if he was making an oath. "You're my only girlfriend, my only bride, and my only wife." Yi Zissou was extremely touched. Her black crystal-like eyes became misty. She muttered, "Senior, I believe you." Jiang Tianhao lovingly pinched her perky nose. His deep voice was bewitching. "Zissou, don't call me senior anymore. Call me by my name." Yi Zissou's heart trembled. Her entire body was numb. She gazed lovingly into his eyes. Her red lips parted slightly. She softly murmured, "Tianhao." It was a young man and woman. After a while, both of them couldn't help but be aroused. The two of them hugged each other tightly and kissed. When Yi Zi regained her senses, the two of them were already in a mess. His thick chest was pressed against her soft pink body. His hot and hard body was rubbing against her abdomen. Her whole body was trembling, and a part of her heart was uncomfortably empty. She really wanted something to fill it up. She was a little expectant and a little afraid. She didn't know if she should reject him. "Tianhao," she was on the verge of tears. Her helpless voice was seductive. It made his blood boil even more. He almost couldn't hold it in anymore. He suddenly hugged her tightly. Panting heavily, his voice was extremely hoarse. Don't be afraid. I won't hurt you. I'll wait until the day we get married." Yi Zissou's eyes were filled with tears. Her wet eyes were as bright as crystals. She was touched and kissed his lips. Her Tianhao must love her very much. Otherwise he wouldn't respect her so much. After his breathing calmed down and his lust receded, Jiang Tianhao hugged Yi Zissou. Stroking her soft, silky hair, he said in a low voice, My family isn't rich. You're the daughter of a rich family. There are so many people pursuing you. Why did you choose me?" Yi Zissou obediently lay on his chest. She pouted playfully. In my eyes, you're the best. I like you. If you regret it now, it's not too late. Don't say such things. I'll be sad. I won't regret it for the rest of my life. Jiang Qianhao kissed her forehead. The two of them talked for a while. Jiang Qianhao hesitated for a moment. It seemed like he wanted to say something but didn't know how to open his mouth. Yi Zixu said coquettishly, Qianhao, we're a couple now. We should be honest with each other. If there's anything you want to say, just say it. Jiang Qianhao was almost unable to hold on. He said worriedly, You promise you won't be angry? You won't look down on me? Of course not. No matter what you do, I'll support you. You're the best. Jiang Qianhao kissed her cheek. After thinking for a while, he said slowly, let me tell you a story. Attention Songshu 566. Chapter 807. 20 years ago there was a pair of good brothers. They discussed starting a business together and started a company. Their business was thriving and their business was getting better and better. The relationship between the two brothers changed. One of them had evil thoughts. He wanted to drive the other person away and take over the whole company. This person schemed to frame his brother. He gave his brother $1 million to drive him out of the company and took over the company for himself. Later, the person who was driven away tried to start a new business, but he was deceived and all his assets were cheated. He was forced to make a living and asked his good brother for help. In the end, the ambitious man agreed on the surface, but arranged a car accident that killed his old friend. The company's business was getting better and bigger. It's now called G Group. The man who killed his friend was called Ji Bowen. The man who was driven out of the company and killed was my father, Jiang Xingyao. Yi Zixu was shocked. She couldn't believe it. In her eyes, although Ji Bowen was serious and didn't have much feelings for her, he wasn't an evil person. Would he really do something like murder for money? Jiang Qianhao looked at her wandering eyes and sighed. You think I'm lying to you, right? No, it's not like that. I'm just too shocked. I didn't expect Uncle Ji to be that kind of person. Yi Zixu hesitated for a moment between her stepfather and her lover. In the end, she chose to believe her lover. If I hadn't experienced it myself, I wouldn't have believed it either. I can only say that you can't judge a book by its cover. He hugged her tightly and said in a low voice, Now you understand why I got close to Jiyuchi. Yi Zixu's eyes lit up. She widened her eyes in disbelief. You want to take revenge on Ji Bowen through her? Jiang Qianhao opened his hand and covered her eyes. He said helplessly, don't look at me like that. You make me feel dirty and scary. I approached Jiyuchi for revenge. Most importantly, I wanted to take back the assets that belonged to the Jiang family. My father sacrificed a lot for the G Group. His last wish was for me to take back what belonged to him. At this moment, the shock in Yi Zixu's heart was indescribable. She could hear resentment, unwillingness, and a deep sense of helplessness in his deep voice. He was a proud man. He must feel terrible for exposing the darkness in his heart in front of her. Yi Zixu's heart ached. She hugged his waist tightly and said gently, Qianhao, you're very good. In my heart, no one can compare to you. If you want to seize the Ji family's wealth, I will help you. If you want revenge, I will also help you. No, you're too beautiful. I don't want to drag you into this. As long as you understand that no matter what I do, it's for our future, I'm satisfied. He was considerate of her in every way, which made her feel even more touched. She pulled down his hand and looked at his handsome face seriously. She said slowly, Qianhao, I'm not afraid. For our future, I can do anything. His eyes reddened and sparkled. He was ashamed and touched. He murmured, I love you. I will never let you down in this life. Yi Zixu smiled sweetly. I believe you. The two of them hugged tightly and kissed passionately. On the surface, they looked like a pair of infatuated lovers, but in their hearts, they each had their own plans. Yi Zixu was indeed deeply in love with Jiang Qianhao, but she was unwilling to live a poor life with him. She originally wanted to persuade him to seize the Ji family's assets with her, but she didn't expect him to take the initiative to ask her. How could she not be happy? As for Jiang Qianhao, he thought that he had won over Yi Zixu and was also overjoyed. However, he was a cautious person and wouldn't completely trust someone. After several probing, he found that Yi Zixu was sincerely on his side, so he let down his guard. After the two of them had a heart-to-heart talk, their relationship became even more intimate. There were a few times when they almost had sex. Later, they both had the mentality of tying each other down. One time they got drunk and the two of them finally succeeded in having sex. Yi Zixu was Jiang Qianhao's first woman. After tasting the sweetness, he used her more sincerely and treated her more carefully. Yizisu was nourished by love and glowed brightly every day. She couldn't wait to tell the world how happy she was. However, this happiness wouldn't last long because soon she would have to help her lover pursue Jiuchi and win Jiuchi's heart. On the dark avenue, the only street lamp was blocked by the lush foliage and only a little light seeped in. Jiuchi walked forward unhurriedly with a strap on her arm. The sound of her high heels was particularly clear in the night. She didn't know when, but there were a few hurried footsteps behind her. She had a bad premonition and couldn't help but quicken her pace. When she quickened her pace, the people behind her also quickened their pace. She looked at the lights in the distance and simply ran wildly. The sound of her high heels sounded very frantic in the alley. "Yo beauty, it's so late. Where are you going?" A hooligan-looking man appeared from the corner and blocked in front of Jiuchi. She took 2 steps back in a panic and said nervously, You move aside. Beauty, it's lonely in the middle of the night. Why don't you have some fun with us brothers?" An annoying voice came from behind her. Jiuchi didn't need to turn around to know that it was the 2 thieves who had been following her. 3 big men flanked her from the front and back. 3 wretched gazes fell on her as if they wanted to eat her alive. Jiuchi was like an ordinary girl who had met a criminal. She hugged her chest and screamed in a panic, "Don't come over. If you come any closer, I'm going to scream for help." The man in the lead laughed sinisterly and said a very classic line, "Go ahead and scream. Even if you scream until your throat breaks, no one will come to save you." "Help!" Jiuchi closed her eyes and screamed in a panic. Like a madwoman, she swung her handbag and violently beat the 3 people who were close to her. She had recently made great progress in her martial arts practice. The 3 thieves in front of her were not her opponents at all. She screamed for help, but in reality the 3 of them were beaten to the point that they couldn't even fight back. "Stop!" An angry low voice was heard. The 3 thieves simultaneously heaved a sigh of relief. Oh my God, the person they were waiting for finally came. If they didn't come, they would have been beaten to death. From an outsider's perspective, Jiuchi had her eyes closed and was beating randomly. The 3 of them didn't dare to come close, but in reality, only the 3 of them knew how sad they were. How was this the delicate miss? This was clearly the boxing champion Tyson. His strength was astonishing. They were about to suffer internal injuries from his beating. No, they had to ask for more medical fees from that guy. Jiuchi heard the familiar voice and trembled as she opened her eyes. She looked at the man in front of her in disbelief. She mumbled, "Senior." Xianxia was wearing a black trench coat. His handsome face was covered in dark clouds as he fought with the 3 hooligans. He was like those chivalrous heroes in television dramas. He was so handsome that people didn't dare to look at him directly. He kicked one of the hooligans to the ground and punched another's chin. Then he grabbed Jiuchi's wrist and ran forward. As he ran, he comforted her. "Yuchi, don't be afraid. I'm here." "Senior." Jiuchi gazed at his handsome profile. Her eyes were red and tears were about to fall from her eyes. Xuanhuan held her hand tightly without batting an eyelid. He said gently, "Don't be afraid. It's all right now." She was touched and replied with an She continued to run forward with him. As they ran, she suddenly screamed, "Aya!" "What's wrong?" Jianghu hurriedly stopped. She bent over and held her knees with teary eyes. She looked very pitiful as she was about to cry. She pouted and said, "I sprained my ankle." "Take a break first. We've already shaken them off." Jianghu carefully supported her and then squatted down to check her right foot. He gently pressed the ankle with his hand. "Does it hurt?" "It hurts, it hurts, it hurts." Jiuchi held back her tears and said pitifully, "It hurts and it's hot. It must be swollen." Jianghu looked distressed. "Yuchi, bear with it for a while. I'll take you to the school hospital." They were now on the way to the library. They still had to walk more than 200 meters to get to the school hospital. Jiuchi limped 2 steps. Jianghu suddenly turned his back to her and squatted in front of her. He said gently, "Yuchi, come on up. I'll carry you." Jiuchi's eyes had a cold smile, but her words were slightly flustered. "How can I do that, senior? I can walk on my own." Jianghu's voice was gentle but firm. "Yuchi, listen to me. Come on up. Otherwise your foot will get worse." Jiuchi hesitated for a moment before she finally lay on his back. She hesitantly hugged his neck and whispered in his ear, "Senior, thank you. If you weren't here tonight, I don't know what would have happened." Her warm breath sprayed on the back of his neck like a warm little hand caressing his skin. He couldn't help but stiffen. "Do we still need to be so polite between us? Yuchi, it's a good thing you're okay. When I saw you surrounded by them, I almost went crazy." His voice was full of worry and concern. His disguise was flawless, as if he wasn't the one who hired those hooligans. Jianghu forcefully suppressed the hatred and disgust in her heart. She placed her fingers on the important acupuncture points on the back of his neck several times before slowly withdrawing them. She wouldn't let him die so easily. She wanted him to suffer all kinds of torment and get revenge for all the humiliation she had suffered in her previous life. There was only one doctor on duty at the school hospital. Jianghu used the excuse that she was embarrassed to take off her shoes in front of Jiang Tianhao and drove Jiang Tianhao out of the office. After she took off her shoes, the female doctor pressed on her ankle and muttered suspiciously, "It's not red or swollen. It shouldn't be that serious. Does it hurt a lot?" Jianghu smiled fawningly. "Doctor, I'm fine. I just want my boyfriend to take care of me for 2 days. Can you help me bandage my ankle and pretend?" The female doctor shook her head helplessly as she took the gauze. "You young people are just messing around?" Jianghu smiled. "Thank you, doctor." After leaving the school hospital, Jiang Tianhao wanted to carry Jianghu on his back again. Jianghu pulled him up from the ground and said coquettishly, "The doctor just applied medicine for me. I'm fine now. I can walk on my own." "Then I'll help you." Jiang Tianhao held her arm with one hand and her waist with the other. Their shadows intertwined under the light like a loving couple. Welfare Hongxia 866.